You are 11 years old, and your feet do not reach the floor of the courtroom, so you let them swing, slow, like the pendulum on your grandmother's clock. The judge leans forward with a kind voice and asks the one question the lawyers swore would never be said out loud. Which parent do you want to live with? Behind you, you can feel them both, your mother on the left, your father on the right, breathing the careful way people breathe when they are trying not to. You do not turn around, because if you turn around you will have to look at a face, and looking at a face feels like the same thing as choosing one. High on the wall there is a window, and through it you can see the parking lot, and you have already found both of their cars. Your father's car is running, a thin gray rope of exhaust climbing into the cold air. Your mother's car sits dark and quiet, because she came early and switched hers off. That is the whole difference between them, you think, and you have always known it without the words. One is always about to leave, and one is already here. Between the two homes there was always a duffel bag that lived half-packed by the door, never fully unzipped, never fully put away. And there were the parking lot handoffs, where one of them pulled in and one of them pulled out, and you were the thing passed between two idling cars. You did not know a person could be a tiebreaker until today, until two grown-ups stood very still and waited for a child to settle it. It began 2 winters ago, not with a fight, but with a sound, the front door clicking shut softer than usual, like he was trying not to wake you. In the morning your mother was scrubbing a pan that was already clean, and she said your father would be staying somewhere else for a while, and the word, well, did a great deal of heavy lifting. Nobody yelled, and that was the part that frightened you. You had braced for thunder and got gray weather instead, the kind that just keeps going. Your father's new place smelled like fresh paint and takeout boxes, and he made the whole thing sound like an adventure. He had an air mattress for you and a box of the cereal with the marshmallows, the kind your mother always said would rot your teeth. He let you stay up late and called it guys' night, and he would say 5 more minutes and mean it, and that was the best feeling in the world. But 5 more minutes was also what he said when he was late to pick you up, idling at the curb with the engine running. And it was what he said before he glanced at his watch and cut a weekend short, and you learned to read that glance the way sailors read the sky. Once he took you fishing and promised the whole day, and by lunch his phone was buzzing and the boat was already turning back toward the dock. On your 10th birthday, he arrived an hour late with a present so big it embarrassed everyone, as if the size of the box could stand in for the hour. Later there was a second coffee mug at his place that wasn't yours and wasn't his, and a coat on the hook by the door, and you understood his life was already moving on without needing you in it. He never once said a bad word about your mother, and somehow that made it worse, made him seem like the gentle one, the bigger person. When her name came up, he would just go quiet and a little sad, and you filled that silence with the story you already wanted to believe. Being chosen by the fun one felt like being picked first in gym, and you did not yet know that fun is the cheapest thing a parent can give. Your mother's apartment was smaller and louder, the radiator clanking, the rent always a little ahead of the paycheck. On the refrigerator were sticky notes in her tired handwriting. Dentist Tuesday, permission slip, call about the heat, a small yellow map of everything holding your life together. She was tired in a way you resented, because tired is not fun, and you were 11 and you badly wanted fun. So you blamed her. You will not pretend otherwise now, because anger needs somewhere to land, and she was always the one still in the room. You'd find her asleep at the kitchen table some nights, head down on a pile of bills, the pen still in her hand. Once, through the wall, you heard her crying in the bathroom with the fan turned on so you wouldn't hear, and you turned your music up so she'd think it worked. She taught herself to fix the chain on your bike, the thing your father used to do, kneeling in the cold with grease on her hands and no one to thank her. And she never said a bad word about him either, though she had every reason to. She just folded the hard parts away where you couldn't reach them. You took every bit of it for granted, because staying looks a lot like boredom when you are too young to know what it costs. Then came the lawyers and the meetings and the word custody, a word that sounds like a dessert and tastes like nothing at all. A woman with kind eyes and a clipboard asked you questions in a room with far too many toys for a kid your age. You understood the toys were a kind of trick, so you sat very still and chose your words like stepping stones across a river. Both of them coached you, though neither would ever have called it that. Your father said, just tell the truth, kiddo, tell them where you're happiest, and you heard the marshmallows and the late movies and knew exactly which answer that pointed to. Your mother said, tell them the truth, baby, and then she stopped, and added nothing to tip the scale, and at the time you thought that meant she cared less. You see it now. She was the only one who left the sentence empty on purpose. The day of the hearing came cold and too bright, and you wore the stiff collared shirt and the shoes that pinched at the heel. Your father said you looked sharp. Your mother just reached over and fixed your collar without a single word. In the hallway outside the courtroom, there is a bench, a water cooler, and a stack of little paper cups, and you fold one flat and unfold it, and fold it flat again until it tears. That is when you hear them, just around the corner, your mother's voice, low, talking with her lawyer, not meant for you. The lawyer is saying they have a strong case, the schedule, the stability, the notes on the fridge, that she could win this if she pushed. And your mother says, I don't want to win him like that. I don't want him standing up there feeling like a rope two people are pulling in half. She says, if he chooses his father, I won't fight it in front of him. I am not going to make my son choose between loving me and telling the truth. You stand very still by the water cooler, the torn cup in your fist, and the whole shape of the last 2 years quietly turns inside out. All this time you thought she was quiet because she had nothing to say. She was quiet because she was holding her tongue so it would never cut you. You think of the running car and the car switched off. You think of who arrived early and who is always about to leave. And you understand, at last, that always there was never boring. It was the most expensive thing either of them ever gave you, and only one of them was paying. Something in you settles then, the way water settles after the stone goes in, and you already know what you will say before they call your name. They call you in. The hallway is too bright, the door's too heavy, and your pinching shoes carry you toward the question waiting inside. And now here you are again, back inside the question, feet swinging above the floor, both of them behind you, the judge waiting with her patient hands. You glance up at the high window one last time. The gray exhaust still climbs from your father's car, running, even now, even for this. You turn around. You promised yourself you wouldn't, but you do, because they deserve your face for this and not the back of your head. Your mother's hands are knotted white in her lap, and she gives you a small smile, working so hard to say it's okay. Whatever you choose, it's okay. Your father smiles too, warm and easy. And then, because he cannot help it, because it is simply who he is, his eyes flick down to his watch. It is such a small thing. He probably does not even know he did it. But you have read that glance your entire life, and it still means the same. Somewhere else is already pulling. You turn back to the judge. Your mouth has gone dry, and the whole room leans in like one held breath. And you say her name. You say, my mom. I want to live with my mom. You do not say it because you love her more. Love was never the question. Staying was, and only one of them ever learned how. Behind you, your mother makes a sound, half a sob, quickly swallowed, the sound of someone who had prepared to lose and didn't. And then you look at your father, because you have to know, and that is the moment you will carry for the rest of your life. His face does something fast and complicated, and underneath the hurt, for just 1 second, before he can hide it, there is relief. Relief, like a man who has been holding a heavy door open against the wind, finally and quietly allowed to let it close. You see that you did not break his heart. You handed him back his freedom, and some small ashamed part of him is grateful, and that is so much worse than tears. He will be a good weekend father. He will do the pancakes and the late movies and the 5 more minutes, and he will mean every single one. But he will never have to learn the sticky notes, the dentist on Tuesday, the call about the heat, and now you both know it, and neither of you will ever say it out loud. The judge says some kind words you do not really hear. Papers move, a stamp comes down, and it is over faster than you believed a whole life could be decided. Out in the hallway your mother kneels and holds you too tight, and over her shoulder you watch your father shrug into his coat. He hugs you, and he smells like cold air and the cologne he has worn forever, and he says, I'm proud of you for being honest, kiddo, and he means that too. Then he checks his watch, for real this time, and you find you do not even mind, because you finally understand it was never about you, it was just the weather of him. Through the tall window you watch him cross the parking lot to the car that is still running, the gray rope of exhaust waiting, patient in a way he never quite could be. He pulls out first. Your mother's car still sits dark and cold and parked, because she will always be the one who leaves last, who stays a little longer, who turns the engine off. On the drive home your feet still do not reach the floor of her car, so you let them swing, slow, like the pendulum on your grandmother's clock. Neither of you says much. She drives, and you watch her hands on the wheel, the same hands that fixed the bike chain in the cold. You think you will spend a long time being sad about a father you chose not to live with, and an even longer time being grateful for a mother you very nearly did not choose at all. She catches you looking and asks if you're hungry, and you say yes, and she takes the long way to the diner you both like. That night, she leaves a new sticky note on the fridge in her tired handwriting, and for the first time you stop and actually read it. It just says what's for breakfast tomorrow, but you understand now that this is what love looks like when it has nowhere flashy to go. And you understand the cruel, quiet thing no one ever warns you about, that sometimes you must lose the parent who left all over again, just to keep the one who stayed. Every day after the last bell, Denny waited at the corner of the schoolyard, where the chain-link fence peeled back like a dog's lip. He was a head taller than you, with a smile that never reached the rest of his face. The first day, he took your wool hat and dropped it in the drainage canal and made you watch the water carry it off. After that, it was never about the hat. It was about the waiting and the knowing you'd come anyway, because that corner was the only gap in the fence. There was a bus, but it didn't come down your road, so the fence was the only way, and he knew it. He'd push you back against the chain link until it pressed little diamonds into your shoulders. The diamonds the fence left on your back would fade by supper, and you measured your days by how long they took to go. He cracked his thumb knuckle before every hit, one dry pop, like winding a clock. You learned that sound the way you learn a dog's growl. Your whole body went still before your mind caught up. He never touched your face. He was careful about that, careful the way certain grown men are careful. He never asked for money. That was the strange part. Other boys wanted your lunch coins. Denny wanted something he couldn't name. On rainy days, the gravel stuck to your knees, and you'd pick it out walking home so your mother wouldn't ask. She asked anyway, about the grass stains and the long quiet, and you told her you'd been playing. She wanted to believe you, so she did. You memorized his moods the way sailors memorize weather, when to speak, when to go invisible. You started slipping out the side door, counting the steps to the corner, praying the day he got bored had finally come. It never came. He was always there, kicking gravel, waiting like the corner belonged to him alone. All through the last hour, you'd watch the clock above the blackboard, and your stomach would close as the long hand fell. His knuckles were always scabbed over, and you decided it was from boys like you. He had one good shirt, a collar gone soft and gray, and he wore it most days like it was the only one. Once he just held you by the backpack straps and looked at you for a long time, and that was worse than any of the hitting. "You think you're better than me," he said once, almost quiet. You didn't. You only wanted to get home. You told no one. There's a kind of shame that closes your throat tighter than any hand around it. A teacher saw the marks once and asked, and then looked relieved when you said you'd fallen. One afternoon, the side door was locked for waxing, and the only way out went the long way, past the canal, down Mercer Street. You walked fast, heart loud, certain he would find you on a road you didn't know how to run. The houses on Mercer leaned close together, paint curling off them, and you kept your eyes on your shoes. Then you saw the truck, the rusted blue one that idled outside school some mornings, parked crooked in a dirt yard. And you knew, the way you know a smell before you name it, whose house this was before you saw the door. The door was blue, with a torn screen, and behind it a radio called a ball game, soft and far away. You should have run. Instead, you stopped behind a dead hedge at the edge of the yard, and you listened. The yard smelled of motor oil and cut grass, and you held your breath so long your ears rang. A man's voice came first, low, then loud, the way thunder never asks permission. Then a sound of something hard meeting something soft, and a boy's breath leaving him all at once. Through the torn screen you saw them, a big man, and Denny, small now, smaller than you had ever made him. The man cracked his knuckle before he swung, wound it up like a clock. And in that dead hedge you understood exactly where Denny had learned the sound you feared. He didn't cry out. He'd learned that too, how to go quiet, how to fold himself small and still. The radio kept calling the game, easy and cheerful, like nothing in that house was wrong. His shirt rode up, the gray-collared shirt, and you saw the bruises stacked along his ribs like the rungs of a ladder. The man said Denny's name the way Denny said yours, like it was something he had stepped in. Then it stopped. The man banged out the back door, and the truck coughed and wouldn't start, and he cursed it in the dark. Denny stayed down a while. You watched him gather himself up piece by piece, the exact way you gathered yourself at the fence. You ran the whole long way home. You waited to feel glad, and the gladness never came, and that frightened you. That night you couldn't eat. Your mother pressed her hand to your forehead and asked if you were coming down with something. You almost told her all of it. But what was there to say? That the boy who hurt you was being hurt so much worse. The next afternoon the side door was open again, and out of habit you took it, and there he was at the fence. He cracked his thumb. Your body went still, and then you looked at him, really looked, for the first time. You saw the yellow-green going brown beneath his jaw, and a split in his lip that hadn't been there the day before. He saw you seeing it. Something moved across his face that I still don't have a clean word for. He didn't hit you. He stepped back and let you pass, and somehow that was the hardest thing of all to bear. You walked home alone, and the whole way you kept hearing that radio, calling its faraway game. The next day he was at the fence again, but he fell into step beside you instead of in front. He said nothing. He just walked, hands in his pockets, half a step back, like a shadow that had decided to be kind. You kept waiting for the trick. There was no trick. He walked you to the end of Mercer and peeled off without a word. It became a thing that was never once spoken of. He'd be at the fence, and then he'd walk you home. The boys who used to throw gravel went quiet when Denny was beside you. He had made the rules. Now he was bending them for you. Once an older kid grabbed your bag, and Denny just looked at him, didn't say a word, and the kid let go and found somewhere else to be. Somewhere along those walks you stopped flinching at the crack of his thumb, and he stopped doing it. He never apologized. Apology was a language no one had ever taught him. At school he never had a lunch, and now you knew that too, and it sat in you like a stone. One day you held out half your sandwich, and he studied it like he was checking it for a trap. Then he took it, ate it in 3 bites, and wiped his mouth on that gray collar. He knew things you didn't, which dogs bit, which shortcuts flooded in the rain, where the blackberries ripened in August. He showed you how to throw a flat stone so it kissed the canal 4 times before it went under. You learned that he laughed almost without sound, all in the shoulders, like laughing out loud had once cost him something. When winter came, he walked you home with his hands jammed in his sleeves, and never once said he was cold. He never came past the end of Mercer with you, and you never asked to follow him past the dead hedge. You both knew what you had seen. It walked between you like a third person, quiet, and you never gave it a name. Once he started to say something about his father, and then he picked up a stone instead and threw it at the water. One evening he stopped at the corner and asked, not looking at you, "You got a good house?" You said you guessed you did. "Good," he said. Only that. It was the closest he ever came to telling you anything true. Then came a week when the bruise under his jaw didn't fade. It spread, and one arm started hanging wrong. Once a door slammed down the block, and Denny dropped into himself, fast, before he caught it, and stood back up. He still walked you home. He only did it slower, holding the arm close, and you slowed to match him and never asked why. One Monday, he wasn't at the fence. You waited at the peeled-back corner longer than you had ever waited by choice. He wasn't there Tuesday either. By Friday, the rusted blue truck was gone from the dirt yard on Mercer. The blue door hung open. The torn screen swung in the wind. The radio was silent for the first time. A woman 2 houses down said they'd left in the night, the way some families leave, fast, telling no one where. For weeks your body still went still out of habit, waiting for a sound that never came. You never learned where Denny went, or whether the man went with him, or what good a new town ever does a boy who carries the old one in his ribs. You went back to the short way home. No one waited at the fence now, and somehow the empty corner was lonelier than the full one had been. You'd stop there anyway, and put your fingers through the gap where the chain link peeled back like a dog's lip, and feel how cold the metal was. You'd think about that knuckle crack, how the same wound-up clock taught one boy to swing and one boy to flinch. You were small then, and you thought cruelty and kindness had to be 2 different boys. They were the same boy. They were Denny. You're not telling this to make him good. He wasn't good. He was a boy with a clock wound too tight, and so was the man who made him. He hurt you because someone was hurting him, and he walked you home for a reason you don't think he had words for either. Sometimes now, grown, you'll hear a ball game on a radio in some other room, soft and far away, and you have to sit down for a minute. You hope the new town was gentler with him. You have no way to know. The hoping is the only thing you were ever left holding. And you think of the bully who walked you home, and you understand at last. He was only ever trying to walk himself somewhere he could never get to. The balloons were yellow, and you taped them to the door yourself, and you used too much tape. You were 8, and you stood at the front window watching the street for cars that were going to come. Your mother had made the cake the night before, chocolate, and the icing said your name in her slanted cursive. There were 8 paper cups fanned out on the card table, and a stack of small plates, and nobody to use them. You'd written the invitations at the kitchen table 2 weeks before, pressing hard with the pencil so the letters wouldn't smudge. You'd drawn a dinosaur on each one because you thought everyone liked dinosaurs the way you did. Your mother licked the envelopes for you so your tongue wouldn't get the bad taste. She said she'd drop them in the mailbox on her way to work, and you watched her tuck them into her purse. So you waited. 2 o'clock came the way 2 o'clock comes, quiet and ordinary. You pressed your forehead to the glass until it fogged, then wiped it, then pressed it again. Every time a car slowed near the house, your whole body went up like a held breath. Your mother kept finding things to do in the kitchen she'd already done. She wiped the same counter twice and told you they were probably just running late. At 2:30, she lit the candles, all 8, and the small flames leaned in the draft from the window. She said you didn't have to wait, that you could make a wish now, that wishes didn't know what time it was. You said you wanted to wait a little longer, and she said okay, and blew the candles out so they wouldn't burn down. By 3, the ice in the cooler had started to melt, and the soda cans were sweating onto the table. You stopped watching for cars and started watching the clock, which is a different kind of waiting. Your mother sat down next to you at the window and didn't say the thing you were both thinking. At some point, she relit the candles, and this time she didn't ask. She just said, "Make a wish, honey." You wished that one of them would still come, and then you blew, and the smoke went up thin and disappeared. You ate a piece of cake because she was watching, and it was good, and it tasted like nothing. She wrapped the rest in foil and put it in the freezer, where it stayed for a long time. That night, she ran your bath warmer than usual and sat on the edge of the tub while you didn't cry. You decided, the way an 8-year-old decides things, that the reason was you. That you were the kind of kid people remembered they didn't like once they got the chance to skip you. You never said this out loud, because saying it would have made it a fact, and you were trying very hard to keep it a maybe. You didn't have a party the next year, and your mother said, "Good. Smaller is better. We'll do something nice, just us." And you believed that too, because she said it the way people say things they need you to believe. Something in you closed a small door that afternoon and got used to the house being 1 room smaller. In school, you learned to be the one who didn't ask first, who waited to be picked instead of raising a hand. When other kids said, "Come over," you heard the gap before the words, the half-second where they decided to be kind. You became easy to invite and easy to forget, and you told yourself you preferred it that way. You got good at the sentence, "I'm fine on my own," and you said it so often it stopped being a sentence and became a wall. At your own apartment, years later, you'd plan things and then cancel them an hour before, relieved. You read every silence as an answer, and the answer was always the one you decided on when you were 8. You weren't unhappy exactly. You just built a life with the guest list kept short on purpose. There was a woman once who threw you a birthday dinner and invited 6 of your friends without telling you. You walked in and they all turned, and your first feeling, before anything else, was a kind of falling. You smiled and you got through it, and later she asked why you'd gone so quiet, and you didn't have the words yet. You didn't have the words because the words were in a drawer in your mother's house, and you didn't know it. Your mother got old the way she did everything, quietly, and without telling you the worst of it. The calls got shorter. She'd say she was fine. She'd say, "Don't make a fuss." She'd say the same thing she always said. When she died, it was in the early morning, in the spring, and the nurse said it was peaceful, which is what they say. You drove back to the house you grew up in, and the front window was the same window, smaller now. You started clearing it out the way you do, 1 room at a time, deciding what a life is worth keeping. Her bedroom was last, because it was hers, and some part of you was still asking permission. You opened the dresser, the top drawer, the one that smelled like her, scarves folded the way she folded everything. Under the scarves there was a bundle of envelopes held with a brown rubber band gone brittle and cracked. You almost didn't look. You thought, old letters, and you almost set them in the box for later. Then you saw the dinosaur, drawn in pencil, pressed hard so the lines wouldn't smudge. They were the invitations. All of them. Sealed, addressed in your 8-year-old hand, and never sent. The rubber band snapped when you slid it off, the way old things give up all at once. You spread them on the bed, 11 of them, every name from a class you could still half remember. There were no stamps. There had never been any stamps. They had not been lost, they had been kept. You sat down on the floor of your mother's room, and the math arrived the way cold water arrives. She had taken them, that morning, into her purse, and she had carried them, and she had brought them home. And she had put them in this drawer, under the scarves, for 30 years, where you would only find them when she could no longer explain. You will not get to ask her why, and so you do the thing you've always done, which is decide it was you. But this time it doesn't hold, because the invitations are right there, and they tell a different story. You think of the house as it was then, the wallpaper coming loose, the second job she didn't talk about. You think of how she flinched when other mothers idled in their station wagons at the curb. How she'd say next year, smaller, just us, the way you'd later say I'm fine on my own. You understand, sitting on her floor, that she could not bear for them to come in and see how you lived. That her shame was bigger than your birthday, and she made a choice in the time it takes to walk to a mailbox. She chose to let you believe no one came, rather than let anyone come and see her. And then she had to watch you at the window, knowing, and she sat down next to you anyway, and said nothing. She relit the candles for you twice. She wrapped the cake in foil. She ran the bath warm. She did all of it with the envelopes already in her purse, and that is the part you cannot put down. You want to be angry, and you are, but anger needs somewhere to go, and she has taken even that with her. You loved her. She loved you, and her love cost you something you spent 30 years paying without the receipt. Both of those are true at the same time, and neither one cancels the other, and that is the whole ache of it. The kids whose names are on these envelopes never knew there was a party. They didn't choose anything. There was no crowd that turned away from you. There was just a woman who couldn't open the door. Which is worse and also somehow better, and you sit with both until your legs go numb. You don't throw the invitations away. You can't, and you don't fully know why. You take them to the kitchen table, the same table, and you lay them out under the same overhead light. You think about mailing them now, 30 years late, as a joke, as a wound, and you don't. Instead, you sit there until it gets dark, the way you sat at the window when you were 8. And you let the boy at the window be wrong. Finally, not unlikable, just unmailed. It doesn't fix him. He waited the whole afternoon and grew up at that glass, and you can't reach back and tell him. But you can stop telling him the old thing, the thing that wasn't true, the thing you built a quiet life around. Before you leave the house for the last time, you stand at the front window and look out at the street. It's the same street. No cars are slowing. No one is coming, and for the first time that is just a fact and not a verdict. You peel the last of the old tape off the doorframe with your thumbnail, tape that has been there longer than you knew. Yellow, brittle, from a balloon you put up yourself when you were 8 and still believed the day would be good. You put the invitations in your coat pocket, over your chest, and you leave them sealed. Some letters get answered and some get kept, and a few you just carry, because carrying them is the only honest thing left. Your mother loved you enough to break you a little, and she never knew the size of it, and now she can't. So you do the only thing there is to do with a love like that. You take it with you, the whole weight, out the door and into the ordinary afternoon. You were 17 the day she handed your paper back face down, and you knew before you turned it over, because for once she wouldn't look at you. You turned it over. A red mark sat in the top corner, small and almost neat, the lowest grade she could give. The whole page was bleeding red, line after line of her handwriting, and you didn't read a single word of it. You folded it once, hard, the way you fold something you've already decided to hate. Behind you a clock with a chipped face ticked, and you would remember that clock for 10 years without knowing why. Her name was Mrs. Brandt, and that afternoon you started hating her, and you were good at it for a long time. You needed to pass her class to walk at graduation. The red mark in the corner meant you wouldn't. Your father ran a two-bay auto shop at the edge of town, and the plan for your life fit on a sticky note: graduate, then full-time at the shop. His hands were black in the creases no matter how he scrubbed, and he could fix anything that had a bolt in it. He had never once told you he was proud of you, and you had mostly stopped waiting. You were not a good student. You were a kid who'd already decided the ending, so why read the middle? But that spring Mrs. Brand assigned one essay, write about a person's hands. You still don't know why you wrote the truth. You wrote about your father's hands, black in the creases, hands that could fix anything except the thing between the two of you. You wrote that you were afraid you'd spend your whole life under a car, waiting for a sentence he was never going to say. The last line, you wrote, "There has to be a door somewhere, and I can't find the door." You handed it in and felt naked for a week, and then she gave it the lowest grade in the class. So of course you decided the truth was a trap, and she was the one who'd said it. You did not walk at graduation. You watched from the bleachers in a t-shirt while your friends crossed in caps. Your father didn't yell. He got quiet in a way that was worse, and the next morning he handed you coveralls in your size. Summer school met in a hot room with the windows painted shut, and Mrs. Brandt was the teacher. You sat in the back and gave her nothing, and she let you, marking her papers in red without looking up. Once she stopped at your desk and said only, "You'll thank me." You said something back you won't repeat. You passed summer school. The diploma came in the mail in a flat envelope, no stage, no name called. You went to work at the shop full-time, and the grease found the creases of your hands by August. You thought that was the whole story. The teacher who failed you on purpose, who cost you your graduation, who you'd hate forever. Except a thing happened that fall that you never connected to her, not for 10 years. A scholarship letter came, to the community college 2 towns over, the writing program, tuition covered. You figured the guidance counselor must have sent something in. You took it, because the shop was already swallowing you, and you ran. You were not grateful to her. You used the door without ever wondering who had propped it open. College was hard, and you almost quit twice, but you could write, and one teacher after another told you so. You kept the folded paper in a shoebox, not as a keepsake, but as evidence, proof that one person had wanted you to fail. When people asked why you became a teacher, you had a clean answer: to be the opposite of the one who failed me. You taught English in the same county, eventually, and one June they handed you a classroom that had just been emptied out. It was her old room. You didn't know that yet. You knew only that the wall clock had a chip in its face. You taught the way you'd promised yourself. You passed the kids along. You gave second chances. You never failed anyone on purpose. You told yourself that was the kindness she'd refused to give you. And then, your 4th year, a kid named Danny sat in the back of 5th period and gave you nothing. She reminded you of someone you couldn't place, the way a smell you can't name still drops you somewhere. Danny's family ran a feed store, and the plan for her life fit on a sticky note: graduate, then the register, forever. She was failing everything, coasting toward a diploma nobody would stop her from getting. Then you assigned the essay you swore you'd never assign, because you couldn't think of a better one: write about a person's hands. Danny turned in 3 pages about her mother's hands, cracked from the feed sacks, that smelled like corn and bleach. It was the best thing anyone had handed you in 4 years of teaching, and it was honest enough to hurt. Her last line: "I think I already know how this ends, and I'm too tired to want a different one." You sat with that paper a long time, and the chipped clock ticked, and something cold walked up your spine. Because you knew this kid. You knew exactly what a passing grade would do to her: nothing. It would set her free into the register. SC would let her walk in June and disappear, and everyone would call it a success. There was a scholarship for that writing program, 2 towns over. The deadline was in spring, and she'd never reach for it. But the rule is simple: nobody chases a door if they think they're already through it. To make her reach, you'd have to take the easy door away. You'd have to fail her, on purpose. You picked up a red pen, and your hand would not move. Everything you believed about yourself was the opposite of the red mark you were about to make. You thought, she'll hate me. She'll fold this paper up and keep it as evidence for 10 years. You thought, I will never get to explain, and she'll be right to hate me, because from where she sits this is only cruelty. And then, for the first time in 10 years, you understood the woman you'd hated. You wrote the lowest grade you could give in the top corner of the best paper you'd ever read. And then you did the thing she did that you never saw. You covered the rest of the page in red. Not corrections. An argument. Every reason her writing mattered, and one instruction: don't you dare let this grade be the end. You handed it back face down the next day, and you made yourself not look at her face. She turned it over, saw the corner, and stopped reading. Of course she did. You'd have done the same. She folded it once, hard, and looked at you like you were the cruelest person she'd ever met. On her way out, she said one thing: I trusted you. Then she was gone, and you let her be. That night you couldn't sleep because there was a question you suddenly had to ask the one person who'd know. You wanted to find Mrs. Brandt and ask, did it feel like this for you too? Did you hate it as much as I do right now? You looked her up in the morning. You found a short obituary from 2 years before. She'd retired, then died quietly, and the line that stopped you was, she asked for no service, only that her classroom things go to whoever taught next in her room. Her room, the chipped clock, the boxes they'd handed you 4 years ago, and you'd never fully unpacked. You found the last box in the back of the supply cabinet, behind the construction paper, taped shut and soft at the corners. Inside were 30 years of papers she'd kept, the ones she couldn't throw away, each one a kid. Halfway down, in your own 17-year-old handwriting, was an essay about a man's hands. She'd kept it, the one she failed, folded the same way you'd folded it 10 years ago, in anger. You saw the red mark in the corner first, the way you always had, and then, for the first time, you read the rest of the red. It wasn't corrections. It never had been. It was her, arguing for you, line after line, in a hand you were too hurt to read at 17. Next to the line where you wrote you couldn't find the door, she'd written 4 words in red. Don't you dare graduate. And under it, smaller, I'll hold it open. She failed you, so you couldn't walk out that easy door into your father's garage. Because the rule is simple, and she knew it before you did. Nobody reaches for a door they think they're already through. Stapled behind your essay was a carbon copy of a letter, typed, to the principal that spring. She'd written, I am asking you to let me fail him. If we pass him along, he goes straight to that shop, and we lose what he is. Give me 1 more year with him. I'll find him the money myself if I have to. Behind that was a copy of a scholarship recommendation, 2 towns over, the writing program, signed in her hand. The scholarship you always thought the counselor sent. The door you walked through without once looking back. She let you hate her for 10 years rather than tell you what it cost, because telling you would have made it about her, and she wouldn't. She took the cruelest thing she could be to you, on purpose, and she carried it alone all the way to the grave. And you never said thank you, because you didn't understand until the exact week she could no longer hear it. You sat on the floor of her room, which was your room, and you read every red word she'd ever written to you. It was the most love anyone had ever spent on you, and it had looked exactly like the thing you hated most. On her desk, in a chipped mug, was her red pen. You'd been teaching beside it for 4 years and never touched it. The next morning you went back to school early, before the buses, and you took out Danny's folded essay. You knew she might hate you for 10 years. You knew you might never get to explain, just like Mrs. Brandt never did. You picked up the red pen anyway, the dead woman's pen, and you held the door the only way you knew how. You didn't change the grade. You wrote, in the margin she'd refused to read, there's a scholarship, the deadline is April, come find me. Maybe she'd read it. Maybe she'd fold it up in anger and find it in 10 years, the way you found yours. Either way, the door was open now, and a kid was standing in front of it not knowing it was a door, the way you once did. You set the red pen back in the chipped mug, and behind you the chipped clock kept its time, and for the first time you let it. The vase comes off the windowsill slow, turning once in the afternoon light, the painted peacock flashing its gold tail before it meets the floor. It does not so much break as come apart, 3 big pieces and a spray of small ones, and the sound is enormous in a house that was quiet a second ago. This is Nana's vase, the one she carried wrapped in a sweater across an ocean, the only beautiful thing she owns. You are 9 and you threw a tennis ball in the house, and you knew you weren't supposed to, and now there is no taking the throw back. Down the hall a chair scrapes, and your father's footsteps start toward the kitchen, slow and heavy and certain. Your little brother, Danny, is 6 and standing in the doorway in his socks, and he has seen the whole thing. Your father fills the doorway and looks at the floor, and his face does the thing where it goes very still, which is worse than shouting. He says one word, who? And it is not really a question, it is a door opening that someone has to walk through. Your mouth is open and nothing is coming out of it, and the silence stretches, and you can feel how long it has already gone on. And then beside you a small arm goes up, the way you raise your hand in class, and Danny says, it was me. You look at him, and he does not look at you. He keeps his eyes on your father, and his hand stays up like he is proud of it. There is a scab on his raised knuckle from where he fell off his bike on Saturday, and you will remember that scab for the rest of your life. You could say it now. The truth is right there in your throat, one sentence, and all you have to do is open your mouth. You don't. Your father crosses the kitchen and takes Danny by the upper arm, not hard, but in the way that means it is happening now. Danny goes with him without a sound, his socks sliding a little on the tile, and at the doorway he finally looks back at you. It is not a blaming look, it is almost a reassuring one, like he is the older one and you are the small one, and that is the part you can't stand. The bedroom door closes. You stand in the kitchen and you do not move, and you count the pieces of the vase because it is something to do. Through the wall you hear your father's voice, low and even, and then the other sound, and you flinch at the other sound. He does not cry out, that is the thing. You are the one in the kitchen with the wet face, and he is the one in there being quiet. Nana comes in and kneels by the pieces and lifts the biggest one, the part with the peacock's eye on it, and turns it over in her hands. She doesn't yell, she just holds it, and she says, mostly to herself, that things made far away can't be made again. You almost tell her then, with the door still closed, with the sound still in the wall. You almost do. But it is already done, you tell yourself, and telling now would only make 2 children in trouble instead of 1. So you carry the pieces to the trash, and at the last second you keep one back, the one with the eye, and you slip it in your pocket. You share a room, 2 beds and a strip of carpet between them, and that night you lie in the dark and listen to him breathe. You whisper that you're sorry. The carpet between the beds feels a mile wide. He is quiet for a long time, and you think he is asleep, and then he says, it's okay. You ask him why he did it, why he put his hand up, and he thinks about it the serious way 6-year-olds think. He says, because you were going to cry, and I wasn't. Like it was just math, the obvious trait. Then he says, don't tell, okay? Dad's nicer to you. And he rolls over, and for him, that is the end of it. You lie there holding the peacock eye shard under your pillow until its edge stops feeling sharp and starts feeling like part of your hand. Here is what you did not understand at 6 or 9 or for a long time after. A thing like that doesn't end when the bruise does. After the vase, it got easier for everyone to know which kind of boy Danny was, and which kind you were. You were the careful one. He was the one who broke things, and the story had been told once, out loud, and now it kept telling itself. When a window cracked, they looked at him first. When money went missing from the jar, they looked at him first. Sometimes he had done it, and sometimes he hadn't, but it stopped mattering, because the looking first was its own kind of sentence. And every time, some animal part of you went quiet with relief that the eyes were not on you, and then hated itself for being relieved. You started bringing home the good marks like a tax you were paying, straight A's, trophies on the shelf above your bed. His side of the shelf stayed empty, and you both pretended not to see the empty part. You told yourself you would pay him back someday, and you kept the someday in your pocket next to the shard, and you kept both for years. When you were 15 and he was 12, your father found a cigarette burn on the good chair in the front room. It was yours, you and a kid from down the block, an open window, a stupid dare you barely went through with. Your father stood in the front room with that same still face, 6 years older, and said that same word. Who? And you watched your brother's hand start to come up, 12 years old, rising on its own like a reflex he never got to choose. And this time you put your hand on his arm and pushed it back down, and you said, it was me. Your father blinked. It did not fit the story, and he looked at you like you had spoken in a language he didn't know you had. The punishment, when it came, was nothing. It barely touched you, and that is how you found out how soft the world had always been on its careful son. That night Danny didn't say thank you. He sat on his bed and looked at you a long time, and what was in his face wasn't gratitude, it was arithmetic. He'd taken the hit at 6 and learned its price. You took one at 15 and it cost you almost nothing, and he had always seen the difference. You wish you could tell yourself that fixed it, that from then on you were even and close, and the carpet between the beds got narrow. It didn't. Some debts you pay too late, and paying them late just shows the other person you could have paid them all along. Danny got older and stopped trying to be believed. If they were going to look at him first, he figured, he might as well give them a reason. He skipped school, he got into the kind of trouble that has police in it, and he moved out at 17 into a friend's basement across town. You went the other way the story wanted you to go, a scholarship, a city, an apartment with your name on the lease. You called him on his birthday. He was polite, And that was the worst part, how polite he had learned to be with you. Polite is what you are with a stranger you used to share a strip of carpet with. You still had the shard. You kept it in a drawer now, wrapped in a sock, and you did not look at it, and you did not throw it away. Nana died on a Wednesday in the spring, in her sleep, which is the kindest thing the body ever does. At the house after, you and Danny ended up in the kitchen, the same kitchen, both of you taller than the windowsill now by a lot. Someone had set out her things, and there, on the table, in a shoebox, were the pieces of the vase. She had kept them too, all these years. She had never thrown them away either, 3 big pieces and a spray of small ones, and a gap where one piece was missing. Danny picked through them with one finger, and he said, quietly, I always felt bad about this. And there it was, after 20 years. He still thought he had done it. He had taken the blame so completely that he had become the one who was sorry. You took the shard out of your pocket, the one with the peacock's eye, the one you had carried for 20 years, and you set it in the gap. It fit. Danny looked at the shard, then at you, and you said the sentence you had been holding in your throat since you were 9. It was me. I broke it. I threw the ball, and you put your hand up, and I let you. He didn't say anything for a while. The kitchen was very quiet, the way it got quiet that first afternoon, 20 years and 1 second ago. And then he laughed, one short breath through his nose, and shook his head, and said, I know. You said you didn't understand. He said, I figured it out a long time ago. Around when I was 10, maybe. He had known for most of his life that it was you. He had carried it knowing, and that was somehow so much worse than if he'd never found out. You asked him why he never said anything, why he let it stand. He shrugged, the same shrug from the dark bedroom, 20 years older and exactly the same. By then I already was the kid who broke things. You being sorry now, he said, doesn't give me back the version of me that didn't get looked at first. It was not cruel, the way he said it, and that was the part you couldn't hold. He had made his peace with it long before you found the courage to break yours. He helped you put the rest of the pieces back in the box, gentle with them, the way he was always gentle, even when no one was gentle with him. He stayed the rest of the afternoon, and you talked about ordinary things, his job, his girl, a car he was fixing, and it was good, and it was easy. But easy is what you are with someone who has made his peace with you. It is not the same as close, and you can feel the difference across a kitchen table. He took the shoebox when he left, said you'd had your peace long enough and he wanted the rest, and you let him. You kept the peacock's eye. He let you keep that one, and you think, now, that he understood you needed it more than he did. He lives across the country now. You call on birthdays, he's kind on the phone, and you are kind back, and you are both very careful with each other. Some nights you take the shard out of the drawer and hold it in the dark, and its edge stopped being sharp a long time ago. You think about a small arm going up in a kitchen, sure and steady, the way you raise your hand when you know the answer. He wasn't protecting you from your father, not really. He was protecting you from the thing you'd have had to know about yourself. And he protected you from it for 20 years, and the cost of it was that he had to know it instead. The vase came off the sill slow, turning once in the light, the peacock flashing its gold tail, and a 6-year-old decided in half a second to take it rather than watch you fall. You have spent your whole life trying to be worth that half a second, and you are not sure you ever managed it, and that is the part that does not heal. But you keep his peace where you can reach it, and on the bad nights you hold the eye of the peacock and let it look at you the way he did in the doorway, without blame. You first noticed it on a Tuesday, the richest kid in school reaching across the lunch table to pull a stranger's tray toward him, the one with 3 bites left on it. He folded the cold crust into a square of foil and zipped it into a backpack that cost more than your father's car. Nobody else saw. They were all watching him the way you watch whether you'll never afford. The shoes, the watch, the silence around him like a moat. His name was Elliot, and everyone called him the richest kid, the way you'd name a mountain, something far off, cold, and done being looked at. A black car dropped him each morning, engine quiet as a held breath, the window so dark you never once saw who was driving. He had the new everything before anyone knew it was coming out, and he wore it like a uniform he hadn't chosen. You envied him the way you envy the sun, completely, and from very far away. But at lunch he sat at the dead end of the long table, where the bench meets the wall, and he never invited anyone, and no one ever asked. And every single day, before the trays got cleared, he gathered what other kids left behind. A half a sandwich, 3 nuggets gone cold, the heel of a roll, an apple with one shy bite out of it. He wrapped each piece like it mattered, and the backpack, that beautiful backpack, swallowed it all. The other kids had theories. Tyler said rich people are secretly cheap. That's how they stay rich. Someone said he ate it later, in that big empty house, like a goblin counting coins. You didn't have a theory. You just had a feeling, low in your stomach, that you were looking at something you didn't understand. You knew his house from the road. Everyone did. The one on the hill with the gate and the lawn like a golf course. You'd ridden past it at night 100 times. You never once saw a light on. Your own house was small and loud and always smelled like whatever your mom was burning. Your lunch was a peanut butter sandwich going soft in a bag you'd reused all week. You used to think you'd trade lives with Elliot in a heartbeat. The car, the gate, the quiet. You don't think that anymore. But on that Tuesday you still did, and that's why you followed him. School let out and the black car was waiting like always, idling at the curb, patient as money. But Elliot didn't go to it. He walked the other way, toward the back of the gym, where the buses don't go. You kept far behind, close to the chain link, your heart doing something stupid in your chest. He never looked back once. People who are always watched learn how to disappear. Behind the gym the world got ugly, cracked lot, a dumpster, weeds coming up through the asphalt like the ground was tired of pretending. There was a concrete culvert there, a low pipe the rain ran through, half hidden by a sheet of plywood somebody forgot. Elliot knelt down in his expensive jeans on the filthy ground and made a small sound with his mouth, soft, like a question. And something moved in the dark of the pipe. A dog came out, brown, knock-kneed, ribs you could have counted from where you stood. It didn't run to him fast. It came slow and low, tail going, the way a thing comes to the only person who has ever been kind to it. Elliot opened the backpack. Out came the foil, the napkins, the half a sandwich, the cold nuggets, laid on the flat plywood like a table set for one guest. The dog ate like it was starving because it was. He watched it eat the way some people watch a fire. You stood at the fence and you finally understood the backpack. The richest kid in school had been carrying other children's garbage for miles, every day, to keep one stray alive. He scratched behind its ears. His face, you'd never seen his face do that. It came undone, soft, 10 years old all over again. Hey, he said, real quiet, just to the dog. Hey, I know. You should have left. Instead your shoe scraped the gravel, and he turned, and the soft thing on his face slammed shut like the car window. It's not stealing, he said, fast, standing up, putting himself between you and the dog. The food was getting thrown out anyway. I know, you said. It was all you could think to say. I know. The dog leaned its whole weight against his leg, and he put a hand down on its head without looking, like he didn't even decide to. You asked if it was his. He looked at the dog a long time before he answered. My dad says animals are a liability, he said. We move too much. There's no point in keeping things you can't take. So he didn't keep it. He just fed it, every day, and never let himself call it his. You asked what its name was. He said, I don't call it anything. And you understood that too. You don't name what you've already decided to lose. Over the next weeks he let you come. Not invited, just stopped chasing you off. You'd split your soft sandwich on the plywood, your half and the dog's half, and Elliot would unpack his haul, and the three of you would sit in the ugly lot like it was somewhere good. He told you things sideways, the way careful people do, that the house had 11 rooms, and he could go a whole weekend without hearing one human voice. That his mother lived in a different country now, and called on Sundays for exactly 8 minutes, and that he'd timed it. There was a woman who cooked, he said, but she left the plates covered in the fridge with the day written on tape, and ate at her own home, with her own kids. So the richest kid in school ate the warmest meal of his day at the end of a lunch table, surrounded by people, none of them his. And then he carried the leftovers to the one creature on earth that was always glad to see him. You finally understood why he ate alone. It wasn't that no one would have him. It was that he was saving the loving for the dog. You started bringing extra, a second sandwich, the jerky your uncle made, a bowl, a real one, from your kitchen, so the dog didn't have to eat off plywood. Elliot turned the bowl over in his hands like it was a strange and expensive thing, a bowl that was just for the dog, that nobody was going to take back. The dog got less knock-kneed. Its coat came in. It learned the sound of the last bell and would be waiting at the mouth of the pipe before you got there. It learned Elliot's footsteps out of all the world's footsteps. That's the thing about being loved by something. You become a sound it listens for. One afternoon, Elliot laughed at something the dog did, really laughed, and then looked almost frightened, like he'd dropped something breakable. You realized you had never heard the richest kid laugh, not once, in 3 years of sharing a building. He told you, careful as ever, that his dad's work might move them again. He said it the way you'd mention rain. You said maybe it wouldn't happen. He looked at you like you were very young and didn't answer. He started doing a thing where he'd memorized the dog, run his hand down its side slow, eyes closed, like he was saving it somewhere they couldn't pack into a box. You pretended not to see. Some things a person should get to do without a witness. On a Thursday, he gave you his good flashlight, the heavy metal kind, and said the pipe got dark early now. You didn't understand it was a goodbye. People with money don't say goodbye out loud. They hand you the thing and let you figure it out later. On Friday, his desk was his desk. On Monday, it was just a desk. No announcement. No card going around. The black car simply stopped coming, and the space where he'd been closed over like water. You went to the office, and they wouldn't tell you anything except that the family had relocated. Relocated. Like he was a tree, like he had roots that came up clean, like he hadn't left anything in the ground behind the gym. You ran. You hadn't planned to, but your legs did it for you, around the gym, across the cracked lot, your backpack banging your spine. The dog was at the mouth of the pipe, waiting, ears up, looking past you, down the path, for a set of footsteps that wasn't going to come. It looked at you, and then back down the path, and then at you again, asking the only question it had. You didn't have the heart to be the wrong answer, so you knelt down in the filth like he used to, and you opened your bag. You'd packed 2 sandwiches that morning out of a habit that was only a few weeks old and already part of you. You laid one out on the plywood, on the flat place worn smooth by a year of his kneeling, and the dog ate, and watched the path, and ate. You went the next day, and the day after. You started gathering trays at the end of lunch, sliding them down, folding cold crusts into foil. Kids had theories about you now. You let them. You'd learned that some things you carry can't be explained to people who didn't see. You never gave the dog a name either. It felt like his to give, and he wasn't there to give it. So it stayed the dog, and it stayed waiting, and you stayed feeding it, the 3 of you somehow, even with one of you gone. Sundays you'd think about a phone ringing in a house with 11 rooms, and a boy timing 8 minutes, in a city you couldn't picture. You wondered if he thought about the pipe. You decided he had to. You decided it so you could stand it. Winter came, and the dog let you put a blanket in the pipe, an old one, your blanket, that nobody was going to take back. It got grayer in the face. It still got up for the footsteps. It still looked past you, every time, before it remembered to look at you. That's the part that stayed with you. Not the gate, not the car, not the watch, not the house on the hill with no lights. Just a dog at the end of a pipe, watching an empty path, certain, the way only an animal can be certain, that the person who loved it was coming back. Everyone had envied the richest kid in school. You had too, from very far away, like the sun. And it turned out the warmest thing he owned was a stray he wasn't allowed to keep, fed on food the rest of you threw away. You think about him at lunch sometimes, at the dead end of the table where the bench meets the wall. You sit there now. You slide the leftover trays toward you before they're cleared. You fold the cold crusts into foil. People watch you the way you once watched him, like weather, like something they don't understand and won't ask about. And you let them, and you zip the foil into your bag, and you go out behind the gym to where somebody is always, always glad to see you. The gym smells like floor wax and old sweat, and your shoes squeak when you plant your feet at the free throw line. You bounce the ball twice, the way he taught you, and before you shoot you do the thing you swore you wouldn't do. You look up at the stands. 3rd row, and seat, by the steel railing. Empty. The blue plastic folded up like a closed mouth. Front row's where I'll be, he said this morning, scraping butter on toast. You won't be able to miss me. I'll be the loud one. He'd worked a double, his eyes pink at the edges, but he'd said it like a promise, and a promise from him still meant something to you then. You sink the free throw. The net snaps. You don't even watch it go in. You're already looking at the empty seat again. Tip-off was at 6. It's 6:20 now, and the seat hasn't moved. Your mom is here, 4th row, holding her coat in her lap because the heater's broken and the gym is cold. She gives you a small wave, a brave one, and you can tell she's already watching the door more than the game. The other kids' dads are easy to spot, big coats, big voices, a wall of them along the top row. One of them yells his son's name so loud it bounces off the rafters, and you feel it in your teeth. You tell yourself he's just parking. The lot's small. He's circling. He's coming. He promised the science fair too, and your 8th birthday, and the time you had the lead in the play and said 2 whole lines. Each time the same words, "I'll be there, kiddo," and each time the same shape of an empty chair. But tonight is different, and you need it to be different, because tonight is the one you've been waiting for all year. Coach put you in the starting 5 for the first time. You're number 11. He doesn't know that yet. You wanted him to find out the way you pictured it, to look up and see his face do the thing it does when he's proud, that crooked half-smile. So you keep the secret folded up in your chest, saving it, and you keep looking at the seat. First quarter, you're nervous, your hands are sweating, you throw a pass into the 3rd row. It bounces up the steps and lands 2 seats away from his empty one, and for one stupid second your heart jumps like he might be there to catch it. He isn't. A stranger tosses it back. Halftime. You sit on the bench with a paper cup of warm water, and you count the doors. 2 doors. The far one keeps opening. A dad, a grandma, a kid with a hot dog, and every time it isn't him a little more of you goes quiet. Your mom mouths, "He's coming," but she's checking her phone under her coat now, and her thumb isn't moving. 3rd quarter, you stop looking for whole minutes at a time, and it almost feels like strength. Then you steal the ball, and your body does it before your brain can stop it. You look up mid-stride, right at the seat. Empty. You lose the ball out of bounds. Coach claps once, hard, and tells you to keep your head in the game. You want to tell him your head is in the game. It's just that your eyes keep going to the one place that hurts. 4th quarter. 2 minutes left. You're down by 1. The gym is loud now, the kind of loud that presses on you. All those big coats standing up. Coach calls the play for you. He says your number, 11, you're the look, and points. And the only thing you can think, the only thing, is, please let him walk in right now. Right now? Let him see this. You get the ball at the top of the key. The clock is bleeding down. You drive. You stop. You rise up the way he taught you in the driveway under the orange light, 10,000 times. Elbow in, follow through, hold it. The ball leaves your hand, and the whole gym seems to lean with it. It goes in. It actually goes in. The buzzer screams, and everyone is screaming, and your team is climbing on you. And you, buried under all those arms, you turn your head, and you look at the seat. Empty. Still empty. Blue plastic, folded up by the steel railing. You won the game. You won the game, and you have never felt so alone in a room full of people. Your mom reaches you and hugs you too hard, and says, "I'm so proud," and her voice cracks on proud. You ask her, "Did he call?" And she takes a second too long, and that second is the answer. The drive home is quiet. The heater in the car works, at least, and you press your hot face against the cold window. He probably got stuck at work, your mom says, to the windshield. You know how they keep him. You don't say anything. You're learning, right then, in the dark of the back seat, how to not say anything. The trophy is in your lap. It's cheap, gold-painted plastic, a little man frozen mid-shot, and you can't stop touching the seam where the mold didn't line up. He's not home when you get there. The porch light is on for nobody. You leave your shoes by the door and the trophy on the kitchen table where he'll see it, right in the middle, under the light. You lie in bed and you listen for the truck, that cough it makes, that low rattle, and you tell yourself you'll stay awake until you hear it. You hear it at 1 a.m. The engine, the door, the slow, heavy steps that mean he's tired down to the bone. You don't go out. You're 12 and you've decided something, and the thing you've decided is to be asleep. Through the door you hear him stop in the kitchen. A long quiet. The fridge opens and closes. You wait for him to come down the hall, to crack your door, to say your name the way he does, soft, "Hey, you up?" He doesn't. The springs of the couch sigh. The TV mutters. And that's the night your dad missed the biggest game of your life. He said sorry the next morning, holding the trophy, turning it in his big cracked hands. "I'll make the next one," he said. "Front row. You won't be able to miss me." You said, okay, because it was easier than the truth, and the truth was that you'd already stopped looking. And here is the thing nobody warns you about. A kid who stops looking up doesn't make a sound. There was no fight, no slammed door. You just quietly, permanently, took your eyes off the stands. He came to a few after that, late, in the back, and you never turned around to check. You taught yourself the gym had no stands. Just the floor, the ball, the squeak, the rim. Safer that way. By high school you barely played, and he barely promised, and the two of you got good at talking about nothing, gas prices, the weather, his back. He got older the way tired men get older, all at once. The truck finally died, and so, a few years after, did he. Quiet. In his sleep. The way he came home that night. You're 30 when you clean out his place. One room above a hardware store. It doesn't take long. He didn't keep much. There's a coat on a hook, the heavy canvas one he wore to load trucks, and you put it on because the room is cold and because it's the last warm thing of his. There's something stiff in the inside pocket. Paper, folded into a tight square, soft at the creases from being folded and unfolded 100 times. You open it under the bare bulb. It's a program. A cheap photocopied program from a middle school basketball game, 18 years old. Your name is on the roster, halfway down. And next to it, in pencil, in his small, careful block letters, he'd written your number. 11. Circled. Twice. On the back, in the same pencil, 2 words and a time. Final. 1. He was there. He was there that night. You stand in his cold room holding the paper and you understand it all at once, the whole shape of it. He never sat in the front row. He never could. He came straight from the shift, in this coat, smelling like rubber and diesel, and he stood in the back by the door. He didn't think he had the right to walk down to the front and sit where the clean dad sat. So he stood where he could see you and you couldn't see him. You were looking at the empty seat the whole game. You were looking in the exactly wrong place. He saw the shot. He wrote 1. He folded it up and carried it for 18 years in the pocket over his chest. And he never told you. Maybe because telling you meant admitting he'd stood in the back. Maybe because by then you'd stopped looking and he understood why. You think about the buzzer, the arms, your head turning, your eyes landing on that folded blue seat. And 6 rows up, by the door, a tired man in a canvas coat, watching you win, not making a sound. You sit down on the floor of his empty room and you cry the way you didn't at 12, the way you didn't at the funeral. Not because he wasn't there, because he was. And you spent 18 years sure that he wasn't. You'd built a whole self around an empty chair, and the chair was never the truth. Here's what you'd give anything for, and can't have, 1 second back. Not the shot you've got, on a folded piece of paper, kept warm against his heart for 18 years. You'd give anything for that 1 second after the buzzer, to turn your head the other way. Away from the empty seat, toward the door, to find his face doing the thing it did when he was proud, that crooked half-smile, before he slipped out so you wouldn't see him cry. You put the program back in the pocket, over the chest, where he kept it, and you keep his coat on. You think about your own kid at home, and the games you've sworn you'll never miss, and you finally understand it wasn't ever about the seat. It was about being seen seeing them. He gave you everything but that, and he didn't know how to take it for himself. They fold those bleachers up at the end of every game, all the blue seats clapping shut, row after row, like closing mouths. You spent your whole childhood watching one of them stay empty. You never once thought to look at the back of the room, at the man standing in the doorway in his work coat, who came every time he could and never let you know. He kept his promise. He just kept it where you couldn't see, and you'll be looking at the wrong seat for the rest of your life. The teacher says your name and points at the page. Top of the paragraph. Out loud. You stand. The first word is 4 letters long, and it will not hold still. Someone in the back laughs before you even try. Then the laugh becomes the whole room. The teacher sighs and waves you down. We've practiced this, she says, soft, like she's tired of being patient. By recess, your new name is already finished. The stupid kid, the one who can't read door. You don't tell them they're wrong. You learn that explaining only gives them more to laugh at. Here is what the laughing room does not know. None of them have ever seen your mornings. You wake before the light, in the blue dark, to a small sound from the next room. Your mother is awake too. She has been awake a long time. She cannot turn herself over anymore. 2 years ago, a clot in her brain took the right side of her body and most of her words. Now her right hand stays curled shut like a leaf that dried that way. You are the one who opens it, finger by finger, every morning. You are 9 years old. There is no one else in the apartment but the 2 of you. First the pills, for bottles on the windowsill, each with a long word you cannot say. But you can read the numbers. The number is the only thing that matters. 1 in the morning, half at noon, 2 at night. You crush the bitter one between 2 spoons and hide it in applesauce so she'll swallow it. She watches you do it. Half her mouth smiles. The other half stays where the stroke left it. You wipe her chin. You tuck the towel. Your hands know it all in the dark by now. Before school, you turn her toward the window so the day can reach her. The doctor said sores come if she lies too still. She used to be the one who turned the pages. Before the clot, every night, the same book. A small blue book about a dog who gets lost and walks home in the rain. Her finger moved under every word so your eyes would follow. You followed her finger more than the letters. When she got sick, the finger stopped, and the words stopped making sense without it. At school, they think a boy either can read or is too dumb to. No one asks what happened to the finger that used to help. You leave her with the radio on low and the door open, so she can hear the hallway and not feel alone. You run the 7 blocks to school. You are almost never late. Late means a note, and a note means questions you cannot answer. In class, the letters swim, because you are tired in a way 9-year-olds are not supposed to be. You put your head down for 1 second, and the teacher's voice cuts through. Are we boring you? The room laughs again. You sit up fast, and your face goes hot. You are good at making your face show nothing. The teacher's name is Miss Okafor. She is not cruel. She just has 30 kids and a list of who is behind. Your name is near the bottom of her list, with a small red mark beside it that means concern. She sends a letter home in your backpack. You read the only part you can, the numbers, a date, a time. You know your mother cannot come. You know there is no one to send. So you fold the letter small and say nothing. The day of the meeting, the chair across from Miss Okafor stays empty. She watches the door until the hallway goes quiet. She writes, "Parent did not attend," and underlines it. To her, it fits the story she already believes about you. At home that night, you do not think about the empty chair. You have a fever to watch, not yours, hers. Her skin is too warm. You read the thermometer the way you read everything that matters, by the number, 101.4. You call the nurse line and say the number out loud, clear and correct, and the woman says you sound very grown up. You sponge her down until the number comes back to normal. By then it is past midnight. Your homework is still in your bag, untouched. You take it out, look at the swimming words, and fall asleep on top of it. In the morning, the worksheet has a crease across it from your cheek. You hand it in blank. Miss Okafor's mouth goes thin. You didn't even try, she says. And because trying would mean explaining, you let her be right. The other kids have invented a game. They hold a book in front of you and ask you to read the easy words, just to watch. Cat, they say. Come on. CAT. You know that one. But your throat closes and the room is already laughing, so what's the point? You learn to carry the laughter the way you carry the grocery bags up 4 flights, by not setting it down until you're alone. Alone is the apartment. Alone is good. Alone is where you are not stupid. You are the one keeping a person alive. She can say 3 words clearly now. Hi. Good. And your name. She says your name like it's the whole sentence. On Thursdays, you take her bus pass to the pharmacy to refill the bottles. You go alone. She cannot. The pharmacist knows the dose better than you, but he always asks you to confirm it. You read every number off the bottle, exact. What you cannot do is read the long warning on the side. So you've memorized which shapes mean do not crush and which mean with food. And this is the Thursday Miss Okafor is 3 people back in the same line, picking up something for her own mother. She almost doesn't recognize you out of the classroom. Then she hears your voice, steady, reading the dosage back to the pharmacist. 1 tablet by mouth twice daily. Do not crush the white one. The white one is hers. The orange is for the swelling. Miss Okafor stands very still. The boy who didn't even try is reading a medicine label out loud, correctly, to a grown adult. She does not say hello. She steps out of the line and waits by the door, and when you leave with the white paper bag, she follows you. She follows you 7 blocks, past the school, up to an old brick building she had only ever seen as an address on a form. She watches you balance the bag, dig out a key, and hold the heavy front door with your foot like you've done it 1,000 times. She climbs the 4 flights behind you, quiet, and stops when she hears you call out before you're even through your own door. I'm home, you say into the apartment, and a voice that is half a voice answers back your name. When Miss Okafor reaches the doorway, she sees it all at once. The bed in the front room, the bottles, the towel, the boy already washing his hands to start. She sees a 9-year-old crush a pill between 2 spoons without being told and feed it to a woman who cannot lift her own arm. She does not say anything stupid like, "Why didn't you tell me?" She just stands in the doorway with her hand over her mouth. When you finally notice her there, your careful blank face comes up out of habit, braced for the meeting you missed. But she is not looking at you the way the classroom looks at you. She crouches to your height and says, "Your mother is lucky to have you." No one has said anything like that in 2 years. You don't cry. Crying takes a kind of time you don't have. From the bed, the mother says one of her 3 clear words. Good. She is looking at you. She means you. Miss Okafor stays an hour. She learns the bottles. She writes the nurse line on her own hand, not yours. She does not fix your life. No aunt appears. No money falls from the ceiling. Those things stay the same. But on Monday, she moves your desk to the front, by the window, and she stops calling on you cold in front of the room. After the last bell, when the others are gone, she pulls a chair beside yours and opens a book to the first page. She puts her finger under the first word. "Just follow my finger," she says. You don't have to say it fast. Something in your chest you had folded up very small begins, slowly, to open, finger by finger, like her dried shut hand in the mornings. You are not stupid. You never were. You just needed a finger under the words, and there had been no one left to hold one. Every afternoon for a month, the finger and the words. Slowly the letters stop swimming and start standing still. You don't tell her why you are learning so fast. You don't tell her there is somewhere you are desperate to use it. Because at home, on the shelf, the small blue book about the lost dog has been waiting 2 years for someone to open it again. Your mother is getting smaller. The doctor uses careful words, but you read the number on the chart, her weight, going down each visit. You start reading to yourself at night, mouthing the blue book by lamplight, until you can get through it without the letters fighting you. It takes you 11 nights. On the 12th, you can read the whole thing, slow, but every word in the right place. You wait for a good evening, when her eyes are clear and she is propped up and the radio is off. You open the blue book. You put your finger under the first word, your finger now, where hers used to be, and you begin. You read her the story of the dog who gets lost and walks home in the rain. You stumble twice. You do not stop. Halfway through, her good hand finds your knee. She cannot clap. This is how she claps now. You finish the last page. The dog is home. The rain has stopped, and you close the book and look up at her. Half her mouth is smiling. Her eyes are wet on both sides, the part of her the stroke never touched. She says your name. Then good. Then, very slow and broken, a word she has not managed in 2 years. More. So you open the book again. You read it twice that night. The clock passes midnight, and you do not care. She dies in the spring, in the morning, while you are turning her toward the window the way you do every day. There is no sound. The day reaches her face, like always. It just doesn't wake her this time. You do the numbers one last time. You call the right line. You read out the address, clear and correct, the way she taught you to be useful. At the funeral, the kids from class are not there. They never knew her. To them, you are still just the kid who couldn't read. Miss Okafor stands beside you and holds the small blue book, because your hands are shaking and she knows what it is. That night you sit alone in the front room, the lamp on, the bottles gone from the windowsill, the bed too quiet. You open the blue book. You put your finger under the first word, your finger, where hers used to be, and in the empty room, you read to her anyway. You are 15, and the hallway outside the gym smells like lemon floor cleaner, the smell you would know anywhere, because it is the smell of your mother's hands. She is 20 feet away in gray coveralls, pushing the mop bucket with the wheel that squeaks, and Marcus turns to you and asks, "Who's the cleaning lady?" Your whole body goes cold, and you hear your own voice say the 2 words you will spend the rest of your life trying to take back. No idea. But to understand that morning, you have to go back to the smell, the candy, and the woman who built her whole life around you. Her name is Rosa, and for 11 years she has cleaned other people's buildings so that you could grow up inside a warm one. 2 months before that hallway, she came home grinning and said she got a new job at your school. She thought you would be happy. "Now I can see you sometimes," she said, between the classes. She did not understand why your face fell. You asked her, careful, if she could maybe work a different school. She laughed like it was a joke, and you let her keep thinking it was one. Every morning, she leaves before the sky is light, in the gray coveralls with her name stitched in red over the pocket. In that pocket, she keeps the butterscotch candies, the gold-wrapped kind, one for you every single day since you were 6. She presses one into your palm at the door and says the same thing. Something sweet, so the day can't be all hard. Her hands are cracked at the knuckles from the bleach, and there is always a bandage somewhere, her thumb, her wrist. She hums when she works, a song with no words, the same 3 notes climbing and falling, climbing and falling. You used to fall asleep to that humming through the thin wall, and you used to think it was the safest sound in the world. But 15 is the year you started counting what the other kids had, and what you didn't. Marcus's mother drives a clean white car and waits in the pickup line with sunglasses and a coffee cup. Your mother takes 2 buses and arrives smelling of other people's trash, and you have started timing your walk home so no one sees you together. You never said the shame out loud. You just got quieter, and you stopped letting her hug you where people could see. She noticed, of course she noticed, and she started giving you a little nod at the door instead, like she was apologizing for something. At school, she is invisible the way janitors are invisible, and you have learned to be grateful for it. When she passes you in the hall, she never stops. She gives a small wave, 2 fingers, low at her hip, where no one else can see. It is a secret hello, a code only the 2 of you know, and for a while you let yourself wave back the very same way. Then one day Marcus catches it and asks, "You know her?" And you say, "She just looks like somebody," and you stop waving back. After that, she still lifts the 2 fingers every single time, and every single time you find something on the floor to look at. Which brings you back to that morning by the gym, the morning her candy was already melting warm in your front pocket. You had taken the candy at the door like always. You had not waved. You had not said thank you. You had just left. And now Marcus is standing beside you, and Marcus has asked who the cleaning lady is, and you have already answered. What you did not know is that the hallway carries sound, and that she was close enough to hear every letter of it. She did not flinch. She did not look at you. She kept the mop moving in its slow figure 8 across the wet floor. And the 2 fingers, the secret hello she had given you every day for 2 months, that morning they never left her hip. She turned the squeaking cart around and pushed it the other way, down the long hall, getting smaller and smaller. The bell rang. Marcus said something you don't remember. The candy in your pocket kept getting softer against your leg. You told yourself it was nothing. You told yourself she probably hadn't heard. You were very good, that year, at telling yourself things. That night she made the rice with the burnt bottom you both secretly liked, and she asked about your day like always. You waited for her to bring up the hallway. You almost wanted her to, so you could explain, so you could be forgiven without having to ask. She never brought it up. Not that night, not the next, not ever. She just let you keep your secret, the way she'd kept the wave at her hip. The next morning the candy was waiting in your palm at the door, gold wrapper, same as ever. Something sweet, she said, so the day can't be all hard. And that was the cruelest part, though you were too young to name it. She forgave you before you ever said sorry, and she made it look like nothing happened. You meant to fix it. You really did. You figured there would be time, a better day, the right words, some moment when it would be easy. But shame is patient, and a boy is busy, and the right easy moment is a thing that never actually arrives. You got older. Your voice dropped. You stopped riding the bus with her because now you had your own friends and your own way home. At school, she still lifted the 2 fingers when she passed. Somewhere in there, without deciding to, you started lifting yours back again. It was not an apology. It was the closest the 2 of you ever came to one, a small hand at the hip, saying the thing neither of you could say. Senior year, she worked a double shift to buy you the gray suit you wore on the stage when they called your name. In the crowd, she did not wave the secret wave. She clapped with both hands, high above her head, where the whole room could see her. You waved back to her the same way, both arms, up high, and for once you did not care who was watching. Then you left for the city, the way kids do, promising to call every Sunday, and mostly forgetting until Tuesday. When you called, she never asked you to come home. She asked if you were eating, if you were warm, if the city was being kind to you. You never once said sorry for the hallway. By then it felt too old to bring up, like a coat that no longer fit either of you. You told yourself she had forgotten it. You were still, after all these years, very good at telling yourself things. She kept cleaning the school. She liked it there, she said. She liked the kids. She never told you why she had really taken that job. The call came on a Thursday, from a number you didn't know, while you were in a meeting that suddenly did not matter at all. Her heart, the doctor said. Quick. She had been mopping the second-floor hallway, the one by the gym, and she had simply sat down against the lockers. By the time you reached the hospital, it was over. They gave you a plastic bag with her things, the way they do. Her coveralls were folded on top, the name stitched in red over the pocket, still faintly smelling of lemon. You held them to your face in the parking lot and could not stop. In the front pocket, where the candies always lived, there were 3 of them left. Gold wrappers. You ate none of them. You could not. It fell to you to clean out her locker at the school, the small gray one in the basement where the janitors keep their things. Taped inside the door was your school photo, 15 years old, the year of the hallway, the year you were ashamed of her. Beside it, taped flat and worn soft at the corners, was a printed copy of your class schedule from that year. She had taken the job at your school for this, not to embarrass you, but to know which hallway you'd be in and when, so she might catch a glimpse of your face. On the shelf was a small spiral notebook, the cheap kind, the cover soft from her thumb. You almost didn't open it. It was not a diary. It was a list. Short lines, dated, in her careful slanted hand, a record of every time she had seen you in those halls. Saw him by the library, laughing. Saw him on the stairs, looked tired, gave him an extra candy. Waved, he waved back today. You turned the pages with your thumb until you found it. The date of the morning by the gym, the morning of 2 cold words. You braced for the hurt of it, for the proof of what you'd done in her own careful hand. It said, saw him today by the gym. With a friend. He looked happy. That is all I wanted. A good day. Not one word about what you said. Not one word about the wave she held at her hip. Only that you looked happy, and that this was enough for her. You understood then, too late by years, that she had heard you that day, and had decided your happiness was worth more than her own name. She had not been invisible by accident. She had made herself invisible on purpose, that morning, so that you would not have to be ashamed. You sat on that cold basement floor, and you said the sorry you owed her, finally, out loud, to a locker and a notebook and no one. There was no one to hear it. That is the thing about the right, easy moment. It does arrive, eventually, exactly when it can no longer do any good. You kept the coveralls. You kept the notebook. And you kept the 3 gold candies, carried now in your own front pocket, day after day. You have a child of your own now. At the door, each morning you press something sweet into a small, open palm and say the words your mother said. Something sweet. You tell them, so the day can't be all hard. And your voice cracks on it every single time, and they don't know why. Sometimes you walk the halls of a school again, a parent now, at a meeting, at a concert, and the floors are wet and the air is sharp with lemon. And every time, somewhere down the long, bright hall, you see a figure in gray with a card, and your heart forgets, for half a second, that she is gone. You lift 2 fingers, low, at your hip, the old secret hello, to a hallway that only smells of her now. Then you take the gold candy from your pocket, and you unwrap it slow, the way she used to, and the foil sounds exactly like it always did. And alone in that hallway that smells like lemon and like her, you finally say the 2 words you should have said at 15. You look toward the place where a woman in gray used to stand, and you say it, plain and too late and true. That's my mom. The card reader beeps the wrong way, and the cashier says it without looking up. It's declining. A hand reaches past your shoulder and taps a card against the machine, and you don't know it yet, but you will carry that hand for 30 years, all the way to a folding chair at your own wedding. You are 19. It is a Tuesday in February, the kind where the parking lot slush has gone gray. The store is almost empty, just the long hum of the freezer cases and the lights that make everyone look a little sick. You have $11, and you have counted it 3 times in your head on the walkover. On the belt, a loaf of bread, a can of soup, 2 bananas going soft, and a carton of eggs. The eggs are for your mother. They are the only thing she can keep down now. She is on the 4th floor of the county hospital, and she asked for scrambled eggs the way you'd ask for something you already know you can't have. So you came to get them. You did the math at the cooler and put back the coffee and the dish soap to make the eggs fit. And it still wasn't enough. The cashier swipes again. The same flat beep. You want to put something back? She says, not unkindly, just tired. Your face goes hot from the neck up. The man behind you is close enough that you can hear his jacket move. You reach for the eggs, because the eggs are the thing you can stand to lose last, which means they are the thing you lose. And then that hand comes past you, and the card taps, and the machine makes the small green sound it's supposed to make. There, the man says. That's all. There. You turn around. He is older than your father would be, 50s, maybe, gray stubble, a work jacket with a name you don't catch stitched over the pocket. He isn't smiling at you the way people smile when they want to be thanked. He's just looking at you, plainly, the way almost no one had looked at you in months. I'll pay you back, you say? Give me your number, I'll. He shakes his head once. He picks the carton of eggs up off the belt where you'd set it aside, and he puts it back down with the rest. These two, he says. The cashier bags it all. The man pays for his own things, a sandwich, a coffee, a scratch ticket, and that is how you know he wasn't rich. He wasn't a man with money to throw. He was a man with $4 more than you had, and he gave it. You want to say something the size of what just happened. You say thank you, which is too small, and you know it's too small even as it leaves your mouth. He says, go feed your mother. And then he's gone through the automatic doors into the gray, and the doors close, and that's it. That's the whole thing. You stood in that parking lot holding a bag that was heavier than it should have been. You did not get his name. You did not see his car. You would not be able to find him if you spent your whole life trying. You took the eggs to the 4th floor, and you scrambled them in the little break room microwave in a paper cup, badly. Your mother ate them sitting up, slow, and she said they were the best thing she'd had in a week, and she was lying, and you both let her. She died 9 days later. The eggs were one of the last real things she ate. So here is what a stranger's $4 bought, though he will never know it. Your mother's last good breakfast. You did not know how to hold a thing that large, so you put it somewhere inside you, and you carried it. You carried it into your 20s, which were thin years, rented rooms, and night shifts. You carried it the night a girl ahead of you at a gas station came up short, and you tapped your card before you could think, and walked out fast so she couldn't thank you. You did it the way he did it. No name, no number, out the door. It became a thing you did. Not often. You never had much either, but when you saw that particular face, the hot-necked face, the one doing math at the register, you knew it, and you moved. You told almost no one about the man. It felt like the kind of thing that loses something if you hand it around. But you remembered his face. You would be surprised, over the years, by how completely you remembered his face. The stubble, the heavy lids, the way he looked at you like you were a person and not a delay. You'd see him in crowds that turned out to be other men. You stopped expecting it to be him. You never stopped looking. The years did what years do. You got steadier. A real job, then a better one. You weren't the kind to marry young. You watched friends do it, and you waited, not sad about it, just slow. And then, later than anyone expected, you met someone who made the waiting make sense. Patient, dry, kind in the unshowy way. The kind of person who notices when you've gone quiet and doesn't make you explain. You were 49 when you decided to marry them. Neither of you wanted anything big. A small hall, folding chairs, the people who actually mattered, which was not very many. Your partner's family was scattered and complicated, the way families get. There was a father you'd never met. He lived 3 states away. He was old now, and not well, and travel was hard, and there'd always been a reason it never happened. Don't expect him, your partner said. He says he's coming. He says that every year. The morning of the wedding it rained and then stopped, the way it does in spring, and the light came back wet and bright. You stood at the front of that small hall in a borrowed kind of calm, watching the folding chairs fill. You were not thinking about a grocery store. You hadn't thought about it, not really, in years. And then the side door opened, and someone wheeled an old man in out of the gray afternoon and parked him in the 3rd row. You looked at him the way you look at anyone arriving late. And your whole body went cold and then very still, the way a room goes still when a name is called that you weren't expecting. It was him. Older. God, so much older, folded down into himself, a blanket over his knees, hands gone to paper and knuckle. But it was the face, the heavy lids, the stubble gone white. The face you had carried for 30 years was sitting in the 3rd row at your wedding. Your partner followed your eyes and said, soft, surprised, he came. That's my dad. He actually came. You don't remember the vows as well as you should. You remember the shape of his head 3 rows back. You remember thinking, the entire time, that the man who fed your dying mother was about to become your family, and had no idea. You got through it. You signed the paper. People clapped. Somebody cried who wasn't you, and somebody cried who was. Afterward, you went to him before you went to anyone. You knelt down by the wheelchair, so your face was level with his, the way he had once stood level with you across a conveyor belt. I need to tell you something, you said. A long time ago you paid for my groceries. A grocery store, in February. I was 19. My card got declined, and you tapped yours and you wouldn't take my number. There were eggs. I'd put them back, and you put them back on the belt, and you said, "These two. Do you remember?" He looked at you with those same heavy eyes, kind, searching, and for a long second you let yourself believe it was all coming back to him. Then he said, gently, "That sounds like something I'd do." A pause. "I'm sorry. I don't remember that, son. There were a lot of years in there." And there it is. The thing that aches and won't stop aching. The $4 that bought your mother's last breakfast, that taught you how to be a person, that you carried for 30 years. To him, it was a Tuesday. It was nothing. It was so small he set it down and never thought of it again. You understand, kneeling there, the plain arithmetic of it. The kindness that saves your life is almost never the kindness someone remembers giving. They hand it to you in passing, on the way to their own troubles, and they walk out through the automatic doors, and they go feed their own. You didn't make him remember. You let it be his, small, forgotten, easy. That was the gift, and you finally understood it was a gift. "It's okay," you said. "You did it anyway. That's the part that counts." He patted your hand with his paper hand. "Well," he said, "I'm glad I was good for something." He did not know he was good for everything. You decided not to make him carry that. He was too old to carry it. You'd carried it fine. He lived with you, on and off, the last 2 years of his life. The way families do it when the alternative is worse. He was difficult and funny and forgot your name some mornings and called you by your partners instead, and you let him. His memory went the way a tide goes. The grocery store, your mother, the whole afternoon, all of it under water now, for good. You made him breakfast most days. You found you could only make one thing well, and you made it. You scrambled him eggs, soft, the way your mother liked them, in a real pan now, not a paper cup. He'd eat them slow, sitting up, and some mornings he'd say they were the best thing he'd had in a week. He was lying. You let him. You knew that lie from the other side now. He never asked why it was always eggs. To him, it was just the thing you made. He didn't know he was eating the inside of a debt he'd forgotten lending. He didn't know he was being paid back one breakfast at a time. And maybe that's the only honest way these things ever get paid, quietly, late, to someone who can't remember being owed. He died in the spring, on a wet, bright morning, with the light coming back the way it had on your wedding day. There were eggs in the pan when the nurse called up the stairs. You took them off the heat. You don't remember if you cried then or later. You still do it, at gas stations, at registers, when you see the hot-necked face doing math. You tap the card and you go out the door fast, before they can give it a name, before they can make it large. Somewhere out there is a stranger who will carry you for 30 years, and you will never know it. And that is exactly how he'd have wanted it. A carton of eggs on a gray belt, under sick light. A hand reaching past your shoulder. These two. He never remembered. You never forgot. And in the end you fed him, and he ate, and neither of you ever said what it was. Every night, the second the last fork went down, your father pushed back his chair, said thank you for dinner, and walked down the hall to the room at the end. Then the latch clicked, and a thin line of lamplight glowed under the door, and the house held its breath until morning. The neighbors never saw that part. They only ever saw the wave. Across the street, old Mr. Pell would lift his coffee and call out the same thing every Saturday. Perfect family. Your mother kept a wreath on the front door and changed it for every season, like the seasons were watching. There was a photo on the mantel. All of you on the porch steps in matching white shirts, squinting into the same sun. Casseroles came to the door warm. The dishes went back washed. You looked exactly like the family on the dish soap bottle. But the door that mattered wasn't the red one out front. It was the plain one inside, down the hall. After dinner, the ritual was always the same. The chair legs scraped, 2 words, and the hallway swallowed him. The moment that latch clicked, the whole house dropped a few degrees, and everyone learned to talk softer. Your mother would turn on the tap to fill the silence and say, "Let's give your father his quiet." You learned to dry a glass without letting it clink. You were good at it before you were 10. You never knew what he did behind that door. You only knew the rules out here. Rule 1. Never be the reason the door closed early. You were 9 the night you laughed too loud and knocked your water glass over. The glass didn't even break, but his chair scraped back before dessert, and the door closed early. That time it stayed shut a day and a half. Your mother taught you how to bring him back, set the table unasked, make no noise, be very, very good. By Sunday the door opened, and he ruffled your hair like nothing had happened, and you were so grateful you cried in the bathroom. That gratitude was the whole machine. You were thankful just to be let back in. You assumed every family had a door like that. You thought it was just how houses worked. In art class you drew your house with a bright sun and a dog you didn't have. The teacher pinned it on the wall and said, "What a happy home." After a while you believed the drawing more than the hallway. The performance got good. You got good at it. Birthdays happened on the lawn, your father flipping burgers, laughing with Mr. Pell over the fence. Other kids said they wished they had your dad. You let them believe they were right. The whole time you were counting the minutes until the guests left and the door could finally close. Because the closed door was the truth and the burgers were the show. By 11 you could read his whole mood from the sound of his shoes coming down the hall. Fast shoes meant a good night. Slow shoes meant set your fork down quietly and wait. You could read a man straight through a wall, and yet you never once learned to read his face. Your mother smiled at that door the way people smile at the weather. Something to be endured, not questioned. She'd been doing it so long she'd forgotten it was a door and not a husband. Once you asked her what he did in there, she said, "He works hard, he needs his quiet." You were old enough to know that quiet was a country he lived in and only visited you from. Then you were 12, and you won first place at the science fair. A blue ribbon, your name on it. You carried it home and stood outside his door. Through the wood you could hear a baseball game on the radio, turned low. You knocked, just twice. Small. The radio went quiet. A pause. Then 2 words came through the door, "Not now." Then the radio came back up, louder than before. You stood there until the line of lamplight under the door went blurry. You put the ribbon in your sock drawer and never showed it to anyone. And somewhere in there, without words, you decided that needing him was the thing that closed the door. So you stopped needing him. A kid can decide that, if it hurts enough. You got quieter, better grades, fewer wants. The perfect kid for the perfect family. Teachers said it, neighbors said it, and you wore it like that white shirt in the photo. Nobody ever asks the perfect kid if they're okay. You left for college the very first August you were allowed to. On the porch your father shook your hand. A handshake in full view of Mr. Pell. You felt calluses you'd never known were there, and realized you didn't know his hands at all. The house kept performing without you. Your mother's letters were all weather and casseroles. Years passed. You built a life loud enough to drown out a hallway. The call came on a Tuesday. Your father, quietly, the way he did everything. His heart gave out at the desk, behind the door, with the radio still on. He died in the one room you were never allowed inside. You drove home. The red door was repainted, and for the first time the wreath was wrong for the season. Your mother was smaller now, and the house was the same temperature it always was after dinner. Neighbors came with casseroles. Mr. Pell held your shoulder and said, "Your father was a good man. Perfect family." You said thank you. You'd been saying thank you your whole life. When they were gone, you walked down the hall. You were 40, and your hand shook like it was 9 again. You opened the door you'd spent your whole childhood standing outside of. And it was just a room. A desk, a chair facing the window, an old radio, a water glass that had dried a ring into the wood. No bottle, no letters, no other woman, no secret, just a chair and a window. The window looked straight out at Mr. Pell's house, at the same street where your father used to wave. So that was it. Every night he sat here and watched the life he performed from the outside, like one of the neighbors. He wasn't hiding something from you. He was hiding from the table. You opened the desk drawer looking for a reason. Paper clips, a dead pen, a grocery list in his handwriting. And underneath the list, flat and faded, a blue ribbon. Yours, from when you were 12. He had gone into your room and taken it. He had kept it here, in the quiet, where you were never allowed. He had loved you. He'd had it the whole time. And he still said not now. That was the answer, and it was worse than no answer at all. The door was never about not loving you. You sat in his chair with the ribbon in your fist and looked out at the street through his window. You waited to feel something land. There was only the room, the radio, and a man-shaped absence in the chair. You will never know what he carried in there. He took the door with him. You closed it softly behind you, the old habit, the careful quiet for a father who wasn't there. The latch clicked, the exact sound you grew up on. It still made you flinch. Then you drove home to your own house, your own family. Your daughter is 7, the age you were when you first noticed the door. You have a good wife, a reddish door, neighbors who wave. They tell you you've got a beautiful family. You say thank you. And tonight, after dinner, you felt it, a pull toward the end of a different hallway. You'd promised yourself you were nothing like him. You'd built your whole self on that promise. But your chair scraped back the same way, and thank you for dinner came out in his voice. You have an office now, a door, a window. You don't even drink. You just need the quiet. You finally understand the word your mother used, and understanding it terrifies you. You stopped in the hall with your hand on the knob. Behind you, the dishes had gone silent. You knew that exact silence. Your daughter was drying a glass, slow and careful, without a single clink. 7 years old, and already so good at it. Already learning the rules of out here. You stood there, hand on the door, the same brass cold under your fingers. You don't know yet whether you'll turn it. That's the truth of it. You don't know. You only know the neighbors think you're the perfect family. And not one of them has ever seen the door. You weren't supposed to be awake, but the house had gone dark an hour ago, and you were still staring at the ceiling. Through the wall you heard a sound you knew better than your own name, the soft, heavy slap of thick pages turning. It was the sound of Grandpa's photo albums, the fat green ones he kept on the bottom shelf and showed you 100 times. He was packing them, at midnight, the night the grown-ups had decided where he would go. You heard tape pull off the roll, that long tearing screech, then the thud of a box settling on the floor. Nobody else heard it. Your mother was asleep, your aunt had driven home, and the only one awake to know was you. Earlier that night, there had been a brochure on the kitchen table, glossy, with smiling old people standing in a garden. Your mother kept smoothing it flat with her hand, the way she smooths your collar before church. Grandpa sat at the end of the table peeling an orange, taking the skin off in one long, unbroken spiral. He didn't look up. The peel got longer and longer, and nobody told him the table was about him. It's the best place, Dad, your aunt said. They have nurses. They have a garden. He set the spiral of peel down, a perfect orange ribbon, unbroken, and said nothing. You knew why they were scared. 3 weeks before, he had left the stove on, and the kitchen filled with the smell of burning metal. Last Sunday, he went out for the newspaper, and a neighbor found him 4 streets over, looking for a house he left 40 years ago. Your mother had cried in the car afterward, quietly, both hands on the wheel, even though the engine was off. So they weren't bad people. They were tired people, and they were afraid, and fear makes its own kind of sense. But they talked about him like he was already a photograph, something finished, something to be filed away. After dinner, he said good night and went down the hall, and his door clicked shut, soft as a held breath. Now it was past midnight, and the tape screeched again behind the wall, and you couldn't lie there anymore. You pushed off your blanket and put your bare feet on the cold floor, one and then the other. The hallway was dark except for a thin yellow line of light under his door, and you walked toward it without deciding to. His door stood open a crack. You stopped, and you looked, before you let him see you. Every album was open on his desk, all of them, the green ones, and the brown one, and the fat one with the broken spine. The broken one had a rubber band around it to keep it shut, and the rubber band was off now, curled on the desk like a dead worm. His little radio played so low you couldn't hear the song, just the shape of a man's voice underneath the quiet. Grandpa was bent over a single photograph, holding a pencil, and he was writing something on the back of it. Not packing, writing, slowly, the way you write when the letters have become hard to make. The floor gave you away, one board, the same one that always creaked right outside his door. He looked up. He didn't seem surprised. He just said, "Can't sleep either," and turned his chair to make room. You went in. The room smelled like him, like wool and orange peel and the dust of old paper. "What are you doing?" you said, though you weren't really asking, because you could already see. He turned a photo around so you could see the front, a young woman in a dark coat, squinting at the camera. "This is your grandmother," he said. "Before I knew her. Look how she's already mad at the camera." On the back, in pencil, he had written her name, a year beneath it, and one word beneath that. "I'm writing them down," he said. "The names, while I still have them." And that was when you understood, the way cold water understands you when you step into it. He wasn't packing the albums to take them. He was emptying himself into them, so the names would be somewhere when they left him. "At that place," he said, nodding toward the wall. "They won't know who any of these people are. Nobody there will know this is your grandmother. To them, she's just an old picture of a stranger." He picked up another one, a boy on a bicycle, a whole summer of light behind him. "That's me," he said, and almost smiled. 8 years old. I thought I'd live forever. Everybody's 8 once." He wrote his own name on the back of his own photograph, and his hand did not shake, and that was somehow the worst part. Sometimes he gave you the pencil to write the years he told you, because his letters were getting hard to read. 1961, he'd say, and you'd write it, and he'd watch your hand and nod like you'd done something important. "You have good eyes," he said. "You always did. You notice things. That's a thing not everybody has." Photo by photo, the named pile grew, each face given back its name in your handwriting and his. A wedding, a baby that was your mother, a dog named Rex who'd been dead since before you were born. Outside, the street was empty, and the radio murmured, and the clock went past midnight without anyone stopping it. Then he picked up a small square photo, older than the rest, its corners worn soft as cloth. A woman stood laughing in a doorway, one hand up to fix her hair, caught looking at something off to the side. He held it for a long time. He turned it over. He put the pencil to the back, and then he stopped. "I know her face," he said quietly. "I know I love her face, but I can't find the name." He sat with it. The radio played. You watched him try to walk back into a room that had already locked its door. "It'll come," he said, but it didn't come, and after a while he set the photo down by itself, away from the others. He didn't write anything on the back. He left her there, laughing in a doorway, with no name to hold her. And you saw, then, exactly what they were afraid of, and exactly what he was racing, and how he was losing. He pushed the fat album with the broken spine across the desk to you, the rubber band beside it. "This one's yours now," he said. "You keep it. You're the one who notices." "When I forget them," he said, "not if, you noticed, when, you'll still have them. Somebody has to." You wanted to say they couldn't make him go, that you'd hide him. You were 11. You said nothing, because you knew. That was the thing about being a kid. You saw everything, and you could stop none of it. So you did the only thing you could. You picked up the pencil and said, "Tell me another one." And he did. He told you about the brother who went to Korea and the cousin who could play piano with no lessons. He told you which uncle was kind and which one wasn't, and you wrote kind, and you wrote nothing on the other. He told you the names of streets that no longer existed and a store that sold pickles from a barrel. You wrote until your fingers cramped, and he talked until his voice went slow, and the box stayed half-packed on the floor. Somewhere past one, he stopped, looked at all the open albums, and said, "I had a good life. I want you to know that. Whatever they say at that place, that I'm confused, that I forget, I had a good life, and I knew it while I had it." You fell asleep in his chair with the broken album in your lap, and he laid his coat over you because there were no blankets out. When you woke, it was gray morning, and your mother stood in the doorway, her face doing something complicated. The albums were packed now, all but one box, because the place only allowed one box. One box for a whole life. The named photos went in the box. The unnamed woman, laughing in the doorway, he held out to you instead. "You take her," he said. "Maybe you'll find out who she is someday. You've got time. I'm out of it." They loaded his one box into the trunk, and his suitcase, and the radio, which he held on his lap in the back seat. Your mother drove. Your aunt followed behind. Nobody played music. The radio in his lap stayed off. At Maple Court there was a garden, like the brochure promised, and it was real, and that somehow made it worse. A nurse called him sweetheart and young man, and he let her, the way you let strangers be wrong about you. His room had one window, a bed with rails, and a corkboard, empty, waiting for a life to be pinned to it. You helped him put the named photos on the corkboard, so under each one he could read your handwriting and remember. Your grandmother in her dark coat, the boy on the bicycle, your mother as a baby, The dog named Rex. He pointed to each one and said the name out loud, like roll call, like proof, like a man counting what he still had. When it was time to go, he held your face in both his hands, and his hands, for the first time, shook a little. He didn't say anything sad. He said, "Don't let your mother feel guilty. She did the brave thing. Tell her I said so." In the car going home, you told her. She drove 4 streets without answering, both hands on the wheel. Then she said, "He really said that?" And you said yes, and she didn't cry, but her chin did the thing his does. That night you lay in your bed and listened to the wall, the way you had the night before. There was no sound now. No pages turning, no tape, no low radio. Just the small clock glowing on the nightstand. So you turn on your lamp and open the Broken Spine album, the one that was yours now, and you read. Name after name in pencil, his and yours mixed together, a whole family handed across one kitchen quiet night. And at the back, loose, the small worn photo of the woman laughing in a doorway, with nothing written on her back. You don't know her name. You will probably never know it. He couldn't give you that one. But you look at her every night, the way he taught you to look, carefully, like she matters, because she did, to someone. And you keep her, because that's what he gave you, in the end, not the names you know, but the faces you carry anyway. The house is quiet. You have good eyes. And across town, in a room with one window, an old man is forgetting your face, but you will not forget his. For 10 years you've carried a folded note in your wallet, behind your driver's license, gone soft as cloth at the creases. On one side, in your daughter's handwriting, 2 words, "I hate you." You keep it for the other side. To understand that, you have to go back 10 years, to a night the kitchen smelled like burnt garlic, and everything came apart. Maya was 15. There was a concert 2 cities away, and a boy named Devin who was 19 and had a car. She asked you in the doorway with her shoes already on, which meant she had decided long before she asked. You said no. Not a cruel no, a tired one. The no of a man who had read the news and done the math. She said you never let her do anything. You said that wasn't true, and the truth is you were both a little right. Her voice climbed the way it used to when she was small and overtired, except now it had edges on it. You said the boy was too old. She said you didn't trust her. You didn't, quite, and she heard it land. She yanked open the junk drawer for something to write with, a pen, and there was loose paper in there too. She grabbed the first sheet her hand touched, pressed it flat to the counter, and wrote without once looking at it. 2 words. She didn't dot anything or cross anything. She just pushed the pen until the paper tore a little at the corner. She slid it across the counter at you, fast, so it spun before it stopped. Then her bedroom door, and that final quiet click, not a slam, somehow, which was worse than a slam. You stood in the kitchen with the burnt pan still ticking on the stove and read it again. "I hate you." You were going to throw it out. You actually carried it to the trash, lit up, hand open over the can. Some reflex made you flip it over first, maybe just so you wouldn't litter your own kitchen with her words. On the back was a drawing. 2 stick people holding hands, one tall and one small, under a yellow sun with too many rays. You knew that drawing. It had lived on your refrigerator for years, held up by a magnet shaped like a strawberry. She made it at 5, at this same counter, tongue between her teeth, and handed it up to you like it was money. You said it was the best one yet. You said that every single time. Every time, you meant it. The drawing had faded in the kitchen light, so a couple of years ago you'd moved it, gently, into the junk drawer. Which is how, at 15 and furious, she reached blind into that drawer and wrote hate on the back of her own love. She never saw it. She wrote on the white side facing her and stormed off, never knowing what she was holding. You stood there a long time, holding both of them, the 5-year-old and the 15-year-old, on one piece of paper. You didn't throw it away. You folded it, drawing side in, and slid it into your wallet that same night. You didn't show her. You thought, when she's calm, I'll turn it over, and we'll both laugh, and it'll be fixed. But the next morning she was polite, and politeness from your own kid is its own kind of cold. She passed the milk. She said thank you. She did not look at you, and you did not find the moment. The note stayed in your wallet. You told yourself you'd give it back when the time was right. The time was never right. That's the thing nobody warns you about, how the right time simply never comes. 16. She got tall and quiet, and very good at leaving any room you happened to walk into. You went to her games and clapped too loud, and she pretended not to see you, and you let her. You'd touch your wallet sometimes in the stands, just to know it was still there. The corner had gone furry. 17. A college letter taped to a fridge. She'd earned a magnet of her own by then. You drove her to the dorm in August and carried boxes you weren't allowed to carry too far inside. At the curb, she gave you a one-armed hug, the kind that ends before it starts. You said drive safe. She wasn't driving. You drove the 2 hours home alone, and the empty seat beside you kept its mouth shut the whole way. The house got quiet in a way burnt garlic couldn't fill anymore, though, God knows, you still cooked. You called on Sundays. She answered most of them. The calls were weather and grades and are you eating. You never said the thing. You'd think it, turn the wallet over in your mind, and then say something about her tires. 20. A boyfriend you met for 90 minutes who shook your hand too hard to hide that he was scared of you. 21. She called you crying once, about a job, at midnight, and for 20 minutes you were her dad again. You stayed on the line until she yawned. You did not mention any note. You were afraid to spend the warmth. 23. She moved cities for the job, 2 hours away. Funny, the exact distance as that concert. You helped her move. You fixed a wobbling shelf she never asked you to fix, because it was something to do with your hands. Before you left, she said thanks, Dad, and meant it, and it almost undid you right there in her doorway. You drove home with the wallet in your pocket, and the note still folded the wrong way out. 24. She got engaged to a steady man who calls you sir and laughs at your worst jokes. You were glad. You were also doing the quiet math fathers do, counting the rooms she'd never sleep in again. The note had faded at the folds by then. The hate was wearing away one crease at a time. The drawing on the back had faded too. Even love goes pale if you fold it long enough. 25. She had a baby in the spring. A girl. They named her after your mother, and you had to leave the room. You held your granddaughter, and she gripped your finger the way Maya used to, and the years folded over on themselves. In the fall, you went to help. Colic, no sleep, the kind of week that strips the paint right off people. At 2 a.m, the baby would not stop, and Maya stood in the kitchen and cried like she was 15 again. She said, I don't know how you did this alone. I was awful to you. I don't know how you didn't just leave. You wanted to say it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. So you said, you were a kid. Kids get to be kids. And then, because it was 2 a.m. and the wall between you had finally gone soft, you reached for your wallet. You slid the note out from behind your license, furry-cornered, folded the wrong way for 10 whole years. She unfolded it and saw her own teenage handwriting, and her face just dropped. I hate you. She said, you kept this? Dad, throw this away. Why would you keep this? And she was crying all over again. You didn't take it back. You just said, turn it over. She turned it over. 2 stick people holding hands, one tall and one small, under a sun with too many rays. You watched her not understand, then remember the strawberry magnet all at once. She whispered, I drew this. She said, I wrote that on the back of this, and you nodded. She put her hand over her mouth, the same hand, 20 years older, that drew the sun and wrote the hate. She didn't say sorry again. The note had already said everything sorry could, in both directions. The baby slept through all of it on her shoulder, fist curled, not knowing she'd just watched the whole thing close. You stood in your daughter's kitchen at 2 a.m, 3 of you, one piece of paper, a great many years. She tried to give it back to you. You said no, it's yours now, it always was, both sides of it. She said she didn't deserve to keep it. You said that's not what keeping is for. You told her the truth you'd folded up for 10 years. You never needed her to never say it. You needed to know the other side was real too, that the sun came first and would outlast the hate. The hate had faded at the folds. The drawing had faded too, but you could still see which one was underneath. She put it in the drawer by her own refrigerator that night, the junk drawer where the spare batteries live. You noticed she didn't fold it back the wrong way. She left the drawing facing up. By morning, the baby had a drawing of her own taped to the fridge, a scribble, technically, but you knew a sun when you saw one. There was no magnet for it yet. There would be. You'd buy one. You knew exactly the kind. You drove the 2 hours home that afternoon, and the empty passenger seat didn't feel like a shut mouth anymore. Nothing was fixed exactly. 10 years don't unfold like a note. The cold spots are still cold. You still don't have all the Sundays back. You won't. Some doors close with a quiet click and stay closed. But you don't carry the note in your wallet anymore. You don't need the proof. She has it now. Behind your license, there's a new photo now. A baby's fist wrapped around an old man's finger. Sometimes you take out your wallet just to feel the place the note used to be, soft from 10 years of holding. If you could go back to that kitchen, the burnt garlic, the spinning paper, you wouldn't change the no. You'd just walk to the trash a little faster, turn it over a little sooner, and say, "Look, you drew me a son." You'd tell her both sides are allowed, that you can mean those two words with your whole chest, and still be the kid who drew the son. That's the thing you know now that you didn't know then. People are double-sided, and you keep them anyway. Your daughter slammed a door once and handed you the worst 2 words she had. You kept it 10 years, not for the hate, never for the hate, for the son on the other side. And somewhere 2 hours away, in a junk drawer beneath a strawberry magnet, that paper is still keeping the both of you. You are 13 years old, standing outside a closed door, about to break the only promise that ever mattered to you. Behind that door is a counselor who can help your best friend. The trouble is, your best friend begged you not to come. Her name was Sam, and you met her in the 4th grade over a single broken crayon. You both wanted the same blue, so you snapped it clean in half, and that was that. By middle school, you had a system. She took the left earbud, you took the right. One song, 2 heads bent together on the late bus, the city sliding by in the dark. Sam was funny in a way that surprised teachers, and she drew tiny comics in the margins of your notes. She gave you a name in those comics, a superhero version of you, braver than you had ever been. You knew her house better than your own. The 3rd stair creaked. Her mom worked nights. You knew which mug was hers, which jokes were old, which silences meant leave it alone. Then, the fall you turned 13, Sam got quieter in a new way. Not the leave it alone quiet, a quiet like a house with the power shut off. She stopped drawing in the margins. Your notes went blank and white. She wore the same gray hoodie for a week, sleeves pulled down over her hands. You told yourself it was nothing. Everybody got tired. Everybody had bad weeks. But you knew her silences, remember, and this one had no bottom. One Tuesday, she did not get on the bus. You saved her the left earbud anyway. You rode the whole way with one ear empty, and it felt like a warning you could not read. That weekend you went to her house. The 3rd stair creaked under you like always. She was sitting on her floor with a sock in her lap, and she was not crying. "I want to show you something," she said, "but you have to swear." So you swore. You always swore. That was the whole language of being 13. From the sock, she poured a small handful of pills into her palm. She had been saving them, she said, a little at a time, so no one would notice. "I'm not going to do it today," she told you. "I just needed one person to know." She looked lighter, saying it. You felt the floor drop out from under you. "Promise you won't tell," she said. "You're the only one I trust." And you promised. Of course you promised. You pinky swore on the bedroom floor. You walked home in the cold without your gloves and did not feel them gone. Her secret sat in your chest like a swallowed stone, too big to bring back up. That night you lay in bed doing math you did not want to do. If you told, you would lose her. If you did not tell, you might lose her more. You thought about the comic version of you, the brave one she had invented. You wondered if brave meant keeping her secret or breaking it. At school she seemed almost normal, and that scared you most of all. People who have decided something get quiet and calm. You had read that somewhere. You tried to talk her out of it on the walk home, gently, sideways. She squeezed your hand and said, "I already feel better, now that you know." But better did not put the pills back in the bottle. It just made you the bottle. You were 13 and holding another person's life in your 2 small hands. You almost told 3 times. Each time her face stopped you, how she would look at you. Betrayer, the word you would be, the word you could not stand to be to her. Wednesday she gave you her blue crayon comic, the last one she ever drew you. In it, your superhero was flying away from the city, getting smaller and smaller. You stared at that drawing for a long time. It read like a goodbye. That was the night the math finally stopped. A dead friend cannot forgive you, but a living one might. The next morning you did not get on the bus. You walked to school early instead. You stood outside the counselor's door with your whole body shaking. You thought, once I open this, I can never close it. Once I say it, it is said. Then you thought about the left earbud and the empty seat, and you knocked. The words came out wrong and small. My friend has pills. She has been saving them. The counselor's face changed, and the room got very quiet, and it was done. They asked her name. You gave it. That was the betrayal. Right there. One word, her name. Saying it felt like handing over something that was not yours to give. They moved fast after that. A phone call. Her mom pulled from a night shift. You sat in the hallway on a cold tile floor and waited to find out what you had done. They found the pills in the sock, exactly where she had shown you. A counselor said, quietly, that you may have saved her life. You did not feel saved. Sam did not come to school for 2 weeks, then a month. You heard she was somewhere getting help. You heard she was safe. You heard it secondhand. You wrote her letters you never sent. You started 40 of them in the blue notebook. Every one of them said the same thing under the words, please don't hate me for saving you. When she came back, she had cut her hair, and she looked through you like glass. You said her name in the hallway. She kept walking, and the hall kept going. You learned a new kind of quiet that year, the kind aimed straight at you. She switched her seat on the bus. The left earbud stayed in your pocket, dead. Once, only once, she spoke to you, by the lockers after the bell. You promised, she said. 2 words. Not loud. Worse than loud. You were going to die, you said, and your voice broke on the last word. That was mine to decide, she said. And you took it. You wanted to say you would do it again. You wanted to say you were sorry. Both were true. You said nothing, because both being true is a thing words cannot hold. She walked away, and that was the last full sentence she ever gave you. You stood by the lockers until the next bell, learning to breathe around it. Years went by the way they do, fast in the middle, slow at the edges. You grew up. You moved. You kept her last comic folded in a book you never lent out. You heard things, the way you do in a small town. Sam graduated. Sam moved away. Sam was okay. Sam was studying to be a nurse. Sam was alive, alive, alive. Every alive was a small door opening and closing in your chest at once. You had been right. You had saved her, and it had cost you exactly everything you meant to keep. You saw her once more, 8 years later, across a grocery store parking lot. She was loading bags into a car, laughing at something on her phone. She looked well. She looked like a person who got to grow up. Because she did. You stood by your cart and did not call her name. You had learned not to. For 1 second she glanced up, and your eyes met across all that asphalt. Something crossed her face, not a smile, not a frown. Just knowing. Just the past. Then she got in her car, and she drove away, alive, into a life you were not in. You stood there a long time, the way you stood by the lockers once, learning to breathe. People ask if you would do it again, tell on your best friend, break the only promise that mattered. You think of the sock, the small handful, the floor dropping out. You say yes. You always say yes. That night you put in your earbuds, both of them now, because there is no one to give the left one to. And somewhere across the country, a nurse you snapped a crayon with is alive enough to hate you. You saved her, and you lost her, and you have made a kind of peace with the size of that trade. Some loves you keep by holding on. Hers you kept the only way you could, by letting her be alive without you. There was a dog in the window of the yellow house on Linden Street, and he was always looking at the same patch of road. 3:10, every afternoon, his ears went up before any car came, like he could hear something the street hadn't made yet. The neighbors had a name for it. They called him the dog that was waiting for the boy who never came back. They were right about the waiting. They had the rest of it wrong. The boy was you. And you weren't dead. You were just somewhere else, getting on with your life, the way people do. Rusty came home in a shoebox when you were 9, small enough to sleep in your cupped hands. You named him for the color of him, the exact brown of the rust on your bike chain. He was yours before he was anyone's. He decided that on the first night, asleep against your chest. Here is how the window started. School let out at 3, the bus dropped you at the corner at 10 past, and you walked the last 40 steps to the gate. Somewhere in those 40 steps, Rusty learned to be at the glass, nose up, breath fogging it, waiting for the shape of you to turn in at the maple tree. You didn't teach him that. He taught himself, because you were the best thing that happened to every single day. The bus had a sound, the air brakes, a long tired hiss as it stopped. To you it meant nothing. To him it meant you were 90 seconds away. By the time your sneakers hit the porch, he was spinning in circles, like he hadn't been sure until that second that you were real. You drop your bag on the hook by the door and say the same two words. Good boy. That was the deal between you. 310, the hiss, the 40 steps, the spinning. For years it never broke once. You got taller. The smudge his nose left on the glass climbed with you, a little higher each year. Then one summer you were 18 and the smudge stopped climbing, because you'd stopped being the one coming home. There was a car packed in the driveway, and a long drive to a school 4 states off. You knelt and held his face and said you'd be back before he knew it. You believed it, you weren't lying. He sat in the driveway and watched the car get small. Then he went inside, and he climbed up to the window, and at 3:10, he put his nose to the glass. Because in his arithmetic, you'd just gone to school, and school let out at 3. He didn't know about 4 states. He knew about 40 steps. The first Thanksgiving you meant to come. The flights were a fortune, your friend's family was closer, so you called instead. Your mom held the phone toward the window so you could hear him. You said his name and his ears went straight up, searching the room for you. You laughed about it. It was sweet. You'd see him at Christmas. At Christmas, there was snow on the roads and a new someone you wanted them to meet, and you went there instead. Your mom said don't worry about it, honey. She didn't tell you he still went to the window at 3:10. She didn't tell you the cold came through the glass, and he sat in it anyway, shivering, watching the corner where the bus used to stop. You were busy in the way that swallows years without you noticing the bites. Finals, then a first job, then a city, then a person, then a lease, then a life with its own gravity. Back on Linden Street, the deal still held. 310, the window, the nose to the glass. The bus didn't even run your old route anymore. He waited for a hiss the street had stopped making years ago. He waited for it anyway. Hope doesn't check the schedule. Your mom mentioned him sometimes on the phone, the way people mention weather. He's slowing down. He sleeps a lot. He still sits at that window every afternoon, the funny old thing. You said and you meant it, and then your call waiting beeped, and you took the other call. That was the size of him in your life now, a soft spot between two more important things. You didn't see his eyes go cloudy and pale, like milk stirred into water. You didn't see him miss the jump to the sill the first time, and look around, embarrassed, to check that no one saw. Your mom started stacking cushions under the window so he could climb up in stages. When his legs got worse, she set a folded blanket on the floor beneath it, in the rectangle of light, so he could lie where he could smell the glass. He couldn't reach the window anymore, so he brought the window down to the floor and waited there. 3:10, every day, for a boy who was 30 by now and didn't know any of this was happening. You want me to tell you he understood you weren't coming? He didn't. Every single afternoon, for him, was the afternoon it might finally be true. That's not sad to a dog. That's the best hour of the day. He spent 11 years certain the next 3:10 might bring you up the 40 steps. He was never once disappointed, because tomorrow always had another 3:10 in it. The last winter your mom carried him to the window because his legs wouldn't. He'd gotten so light. All that waiting hadn't weighed a thing. There was a Tuesday in March. Nothing marked it. You were in a meeting. You remember the meeting, not the date. At home your mom set him in the light under the window at 3:10, the way she always did. He lifted his head toward the glass. The ears tried to go up and got halfway. He was listening for the hiss. She swears he was listening for the hiss. And then he just rested his chin on his paws, in the warm rectangle, facing the corner where the bus used to stop. And he let it go, quietly, the way he'd done everything except love you. Your mom sat on the floor with him a long time. Then she called you, and got your voicemail, and didn't leave the news on a machine. She buried him under the maple, the tree you used to turn at, the last landmark before the gate. So that he's exactly where the shape of you always appeared. If you ever came up those 40 steps, you'd come to him first. She told you on the phone a week later, careful, like setting down something that might break. The dog died, honey, Rusty, back in March. I didn't want to put it in a message. You said the right things. You were sad in a real but manageable way, the way you're sad about things that happened far off, to someone else's afternoons. You did not yet understand what you'd missed, because no one had told you about the window. It was 3 more years before you stood in that house again. Your mom was moving somewhere smaller, and the yellow house was emptying out. You came back to carry boxes. You came back the way you always meant to, just for the wrong reason. and far too late. The rooms were smaller than your whole life had made them. The hook by the door was still there. You put your hand on it without deciding to. And then you went to the window. You don't know why. Your feet knew before you did. The afternoon light came through it in the same long rectangle, lying on the floor like something set down and forgotten. The sill was white paint worn down to bare wood in two curved grooves, the exact width of a small dog's front paws. 11 years of climbing up had sanded the wood smooth. You put your fingers in the grooves. They fit a thing that wasn't there. And on the glass, low down, lower than you'd think, there was a smudge no cleaning had ever taken off. A faint oval, nose height for a dog lying on the floor. The last place he could reach. The place he waited from at the end. You knelt. Then you sat. Then you lay down in the warm rectangle, because that was the only way to be where he had been. From down there you could see exactly what he saw for 11 years. The gate, the maple, the corner, the long empty road where a boy used to appear. At 3:10, a school bus you'd never seen before stopped at the end of the street. The air brakes let out a long, tired hiss. The same sound. The street still made it. It had only moved one corner over. Your whole body went up at that sound before your mind could stop it. Some animal part of you the dog had trained without either of you knowing. For 1 second you understood the window completely. You understood being sure, against all the evidence, that the next minute brings the person back. You looked at the corner. You waited for the 40 steps. Nobody came up them. Of course nobody came. You were the one who was supposed to come, and you finally had. And you were 33 and lying on the floor and 3 years too late to be caught. Outside, under the maple, the grass had grown back over a small flat patch the way grass does. You went and stood on it. The last landmark. The first thing he'd have seen of you, every day, if you'd ever once turned in at that tree. You said the 2 words out loud to the yard. Good boy. There was no one to spin in circles, no whole body wag, no proof you were real. Just the wind in the maple and the bus pulling away 2 streets over. Here is the truth, and it doesn't tie up, and I won't pretend it does. He loved you with everything for 11 years, and you loved him too, just thinly, from far away, in the soft spot between more important things. Both of those were real. That's the part that aches. It wasn't that you didn't love him, it's that he never found out you'd stopped coming. He died believing the very next afternoon might bring you up the 40 steps. In a way, that's the kindest thing that ever happened to you. So you lay back down in the warm rectangle under the window and stayed until the light moved off the floor, keeping, just once, 3 years late, the window he kept for you 11 years running.